Election 2024. Tammy Miller, Kelly Armstrong. The two Republican governor hopefuls will duke it out. This is the North Dakota Republican Gubernatorial pre-debate show on WDAY Radio and The Flag.
All right, here we go. Another evening, another debate. Jay Thomas hanging out with my buddies Steve Hallstrom, Scott Hennen. They will be the moderator for tonight's debate. Again, this is another final debate before election night 2024. The primary coming up on Tuesday. Early voting, by the way, in Cass County. I didn't know this, thanks to Scott. There's voting tomorrow, too. You can vote tomorrow.
One more day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Boys, before we get into tonight's debate, the two Republican candidates, Tammy Miller, Kelly Armstrong, can I say that I don't think it'll be, what did we call it yesterday? Scott needed a definition of? Oh, scorched earth. I don't think it'll be that tonight with these two.
I don't think so either. These are two that have had a lot of blows traded, mostly by the PACs that have been behind them, but some of them have been outright campaign ads. And so I just don't know that there's that much fight left. Last night I felt like we were going to get a little bit, and we certainly did. That did not disappoint. But I don't know that we get that tonight, but we'll see what happens. Tammy Miller is, we believe, by all accounts in the polls, down significantly. So will she decide to take off the gloves a little bit and go at it with Kelly? We will see.
That could happen.
It hasn't been her style in the public appearances, and I had her on the other day, and she did not go out of her way to try to take any shots at Kelly. So we've not seen a lot of that from her, but maybe she will change the approach tonight.
We've seen it certainly in the advertising that has gone back and forth between the two. And honestly, the Armstrong campaign started that with the Tall Tale Tammy series that started. And then the gloves came back the other way, accusing Kelly Armstrong of benefiting from inside information in Congress. And
yeah, it was $150,000 or something like that.
I can't even remember. But
and then, of course, when he was the defense attorney, the ads going after him, and that really, I know that ad campaign upset a lot of people. That came up on my program, and people were not happy about it. There were some defenders of it, but a majority of the people were not happy about that. But, that's the world of politics. It gets ugly, boys, and you guys saw that last night, and you folks heard that last night. Yeah. Let me ask you, too. I'll start with you, Scott. What was your biggest surprise from last night's debate?
Gosh, I don't know. I guess that the Dylan Mulvaney thing was, Steve's idea for the question, and just because, sort of like, what's this all about? You're hearing a little bit about this and decided to include that as one of our questions.
It had to be in there.
I didn't expect to get as much reaction to them. And Alex Balazs was probably more animated about it than either Rick or Julie were.
He went back at it a couple of times at Rick. He did not like it. You could tell he was offended and said, basically just kills any moral character that you might have when you're bringing things like that into the race. So... yeah, we talked about that a lot on my show today, and I asked the listeners, what line did you think was crossed, and had some pretty good responses on that. So, yeah, that's one that will live, I think, a little bit in infamy.
Steve, for you, take that one away. What was one of your big surprises from last night's debate?
I did not expect that Cara Mund and Rick Becker would team up on Julie Fedorchak, although it makes total sense. They're both probably behind her, although it's not like there have been 15 polls out in this race. That's the thing, when you're talking about Trump and Biden, there's a poll every other day. We've had 3 that I can remember in this whole race, and 2 of them had Becker ahead early, although one of them I thought I just didn't trust it. I didn't. The second one I thought, okay, and that was Becker, I think, +3, and then the last one that came out from North Dakota News Cooperative was Fedorchak +7. So I don't think that we've got a 20-point spread in that race, and people are making up their minds, as we heard after our debate last night. People are still deciding and learning and trying to make up their choices on this thing.
I got to tell you, after listening to last night's debate, the more I hear Alex, the more I like this guy.
Yeah.
And we talked about that last night before the debate a little bit, just about, I can't remember if it was before or after the debate, but really that I hope Alex Balazs has a future in the Republican Party. It's a tall order for him to think that he could win this race. I mean, it's a 4-way race. Hard to know. As Steve mentioned, latest poll had Fedorchak up 7 over Becker. Cara Mund was at 10. Balazs was at 5. By the way, that was before the Trump endorsement. So if Julie Fedorchuk ends up winning this race by more than 7 points, I think you're going to see the effect of Donald Trump in the race, because that endorsement came after that spread. So that, who knows what impact it had one way or the other. I guess we'll find out. But back to Alex Balazs, I think, I sure hope he has whatever comes of this race. It's a long shot to win your first time on the ballot in anything.
Sure, yeah.
Right? And not having the name ID. And he really didn't run a formidable campaign. He did the grassroots thing all the way. I think he spent about $100,000 of his own money. But, to be, Julie and Becker both had close to $1 million in the campaign, so you can't be competitive with 100,000. No. So I don't think it's too outlandish to say he's a long shot for this race. But I hope he stays involved, and I hope he has a future in the party, because he's got something to bring. Yeah,
if he keeps his name out there and sticks in, he's a guy that is very loyal to his beliefs, and if he continues down that road, I think he's got something going on in the future. Definitely, I really like the guy, and I like the fact that hey, if you want to come hang out, I'll be at McDonald's I'll be at McDonald's afterwards. You want to come over and talk, man? That's fantastic.
Got that real man of the people way about him. Another thing we should talk about is turnout. You'll find out what kind of turnout operation will happen. Now, Alex Balazs had the benefit of the North Dakota Republican Party turnout machine because he was the endorsed candidate, right? So he may pick up some wind there, but whoever's turnout operation, obviously the Becker campaign has had some help from outside groups. One of them that was in the game with early turnout activity was Club for Growth. They withdrew their funding from the race, and obviously saw some polling they didn't like and placed the dollars elsewhere, which happens late in races when people that have invested in the campaign say, I don't know, the numbers are slipping, this one isn't winnable, we're going to put it somewhere else. So that was costly for the Becker camp and the turnout factor, but how much Fedorchuk is invested in the turnout operation will turn a lot. I did just vote myself, and you can't until 7 o'clock tonight at all the locations. If you want to slide in there.
And tomorrow till next 20 minutes, 11 to 5.
Today, 11 to 7. Tomorrow, 11 to 5. Yep, Cass County Courthouse, Castleton Days Inn, Heart Lake Building at the Fairgrounds, Holiday Inn, Northview Church on 25th at the Fargo Dome are the locations. And there is not early voting on Monday. So last chance tonight till 7 or tomorrow, 11 to 5. But I talked to the poll workers there for a while and bumped into some people I know, and they said it's been very, very slow.
For not just today, but all early voting?
The entire time. Yep. It has really been slow, which I guess sort of surprised me with the convenience of early voting and all the places they had it. I'm a traditionalist. I like to vote on Election Day just because of the feel of it, but I just I had a full day Tuesday, and I knew I wasn't going to have a chance to get over there, so I decided to go today, but I was disappointed to hear the turnout's been low. You'll be able to watch this, by the way, this pregame and also the debate and the postgame show if you go to any of our social media sites, our YouTube channel. That's AM 1100 The Flag. And when you get on there, make sure you hit the subscribe and hit that bell. That way, anytime new videos go up, you know what's going on. This bell? No, you don't have enough with your bell. Give me that bell. Give me that bell. Also on AM 1100 The Flag on the Facebook page, you can get on there, watch. You can also comment on both things. The chat rooms are open. And the number for the pre-debate and post-debate, 701-271-1100. Like to also welcome Western North Dakota. I believe Tioga is going to get this debate tonight as well, correct? KTGO land, out booming of the Bakken, yeah. Flag number 2 out there. All right, gentlemen, let me ask you this. You are the political minds. I am the garage guy. I have my thoughts, but I want to hear from you two because you eat, live, and breathe this. I want from you what impresses you with each of tonight's candidates. Let's start with Tammy Miller. What impresses you with Tammy Miller, Steve? She's brilliant. She's got great acumen. She's been around the block. She knows how to get things done. Super intelligent. Very much somebody that has that operational mind of, we have to set a plan. We have to go for it. Here's how we're going to get it done. Anybody who is a CEO like she has been, and is really was, I think people at Border States will tell you, was instrumental in them growing to a great degree under her tenure. Well, let's take a look at that. Her tenure under she started out 1991. Border States, by the way, employee-owned, account manager. Served in various roles: corporate controller, vice president of finance, executive vice president, general manager for the Southwest region, and president. And then she was named chief executive officer and general manager as well. Or I'm sorry, board chair in 2006. Under Tammy's leadership, you ready for this? Border States grew from under $500 million in annual sales
to $2.5 billion under her leadership. Became the 6th largest electrical distributor in North America.
So she obviously is good at seeing how pieces fit together. And we need more of that in government. We do. And I think Donald Trump showed us how important that is. Doug Burgum, it's out of the same playbook there. I will also say that she's tough. Everybody who knows her has said that. So what impresses me about her, I would say those are the things. If I would say, what would work against her in that job, people that know her say she carries an air that does not allow you to get to know her very well, a little standoffish, maybe not that gregarious leader that's going to make you want to run through a brick wall. But in that role, yes, you've got to work with people, but you've got to be really good strategically. So that would be on Tammy. I think another question about Tammy is she's not been in the public eye as much where she's had to defend stances or opinions on political things. So some of her real internal beliefs, I don't think we know her as well as maybe we know Kelly. On the Kelly side, I think he just feels like a North Dakota guy. Yeah. And I think Kelly has been tough on spending in Washington, D.C. at times, could maybe have been better along the way. But I think he's a guy that listens to North Dakota, and I think he will vote what he thinks North Dakota needs, not necessarily his own opinion. So obviously Kelly, big name, been around the block many times. So 2 strong candidates. I don't think that you could go wrong or you'd have a bad candidate if you were a North Dakota Republican, if either of them wins.
645. Scott, that question to you.
I would echo a lot of what Steve had to say about the business acumen of Tammy Miller. I mean, you can't look at the size of that company. And by the way, it's a famous ESOP. So again, the amount of employee owners that gain significant wealth and retirements as a result of her leadership is something that very much a clone of sorts of Doug Burgum's brain when it comes to business and strategic planning and managing a mega operation like he did at Microsoft. That's obviously why he hired her to be part of the chief operating officer for the state in his office, because that's how he builds companies and that's how he wanted to govern and manage North Dakota. So I think she's a perfect fit for that. I would also echo Steve's comments just about her political skills. I think Doug Burgum had a way of transferring from the business world into sort of feeling like one of us in North Dakota, right? I mean, really loved the Western lifestyle, the small town kid from Arthur, and I know that she tried with Rocket as well, but it just didn't come off as well. I mean, she has a great story, honestly. The small town story, the family hardware store, the whole thing. It's a good story. I just don't think she is enough of a political, I guess, animal, for lack of a better term, to be able to convey that and have that. Steve used the term warmth. I mean, you just don't get that from her. It's very much matter of fact, kind of business-like, and it's what you expect in a CEO at Border States, but you need a little more charisma than that when you're running for governor. I mean, North Dakota, the governor is expected to be at every rubber chicken dinner there is.
Yep, every parade.
You slap backs, you hand out candy, you go, and I just don't think that's her world, and wasn't ever her world. But nonetheless, I think that she served Governor Burgum well in the last 2 years as lieutenant governor, but it was a big ask to think that somebody that just 2 years ago was in the business world, first time in political world as a lieutenant governor for 2 years, going to have a chance to rise to the top. So I think she had a tall order from the beginning.
When you guys talk about Tammy Miller and her standoffish, not real warm, and I do think, Scott, you nailed it, and Stevie kind of did too as well, and that's you have to look the world that she's coming from. I mean, when you're in charge of one of the biggest electrical companies in the country, you're going to be standoffish. You have a lot of people that you are in charge of. You have a lot of people that are probably looking to take you down, take advantage of you. So it's hard to get close to people. But again, when you start getting into the world of politics, especially in a state like North Dakota, where basically everybody knows everybody, and like you said, they expect you to be out at those parades. You have to grow into that, and she's going to have to grow into that real fast.
To answer your question on Kelly, I would say that the legislative experience is probably what is going to serve him best as governor, right? Jack Dalrymple was pretty successful in how he maneuvered the legislature. He had a lot easier time of that than did Ed Schaefer or did Doug Burgum, of course, and John Hoeven, right? Those guys were not, former legislators. Being a former legislator, you know how the sausage making works. And I think that serves Kelly very well, honestly, if he's governor, because you got to work with the legislature. And,
he's got all that experience behind him.
And honestly, Governor Burgum did not. Governor Burgum, really said, and this is typical of a CEO, I'm going to set the vision, come follow me. But legislators all see themselves as, I guess more important than the governor. Every one of them, right? They look in the mirror and they see a governor as legislators. And so, there's always going to be that natural tension between the executive and the legislative branch. But I think Kelly goes in with a leg up, just being able to better, to set a vision, but then to actually get it done and sit down with people and say, okay, I get it. You might have a different way of getting to this than I do. What's your way going to be? Here's my way. Let's figure out a way to do this together. I think there'll be a lot more. I also don't think he gets enough credit for coming from the family that he does, that, his father, Mike Armstrong, is one of as legendary in North Dakota oil circles as Harold Hamm is. Mm-hmm. I mean, been at this for decades through really, really tough times. He survived, and when there was boom and bust, Mike Armstrong and Armstrong Oil, they did amazing things. Kelly learned under that. Kelly was there. He was right part of that. Obviously, went to UND, decided to be a criminal defense attorney and set off on his own and hone his skills that way, which served him well in Congress. But I think the family business, I don't think we should discount the business acumen of Kelly either in that regard.
You're listening to the pre-debate show. Again, Tammy Miller, Kelly Armstrong, the candidates, Republican side, primary debate, facing off here. They're about 10 minutes away. And again, the debate will be 1 hour, moderated by Scott Hennen, Steve Hallstrom. And then after that, back for the post-show debate. You can watch the debate tonight on our social media pages, on our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube, just type in AM 1100 The Flag. And again, make sure you subscribe to that page. Hit that bell. Then you know when new things are coming up, when things are going on. That bell right there. Not that bell. You'll hear that bell tonight. Also, you can go over to AM 1100 The Flag on Facebook, and you can watch it on there. By the way, chat room is open on our YouTube, so you can chat. You can comment during the debate. Of course, those comments will not be said during the debate, but might hit some of them after the debate. But while the post-game show is going on, we will be following that chat room, and we'll be doing the same thing. Your comments on our Facebook page, AM 1100 The Flag. Debate coming up in about 9 minutes. Should be a good one. Not going to be a firebrand like last night. Although, Steve, you did make a point. This is the last hurrah. Maybe Tammy just says, you know what, I got to take the gloves off and just go for it, because this is it. This is the final debate.
I think Tammy's got obviously a bright future in a lot of different things, business-wise, government, whatever. I don't think she's going to feel like, I'm just going to go nuts on this thing and maybe suffer some reputational damage or some brand damage by just being an unhinged person. There's nothing about her that leads you to believe she's going to be that way. She's not been that way. I had her on my show, and I think she's one that's going to stay above the fray. So I just don't see. There might be some pointed questions, things like that come up. But I think one thing you can say about these two, it's really hard to find something to tear them down about. Mm-hmm. Like, there's nothing in the past, like some previous indiscretions or any scandal or anything like that. It's pretty tough to find something to really go after the jugular on these two about. You might have differences on certain things, and the political ads obviously have gotten, well, they did this, or when they were at border states, they had this committee and they did the whole DEI thing or whatever. But those things, you've got to work pretty hard to make those stick. In fact, Scotty and I had a conversation about that one time on the radio about, do these things really stick or not? And we really couldn't find, I don't think, a whole lot that you'd say, oh yeah, they've got, this is a big weakness or an Achilles heel for their campaign.
Well,
so there's not that much here I think you can really latch onto, but maybe you get a last-minute surprise.
No, again, you're talking about that. Tried to latch on to the, Tammy Miller had given $1,000 to Amy Klobuchar.
Yeah.
And I had Tammy was on my show, and I had her on, and she explained that. And it's basically what I thought, too. It's nothing that would ever stick with me. It's like, look, I'm a CEO of a company or CFO, whatever company. I mean, you do that. I mean, if stuff's going your way, whatever.
Nobody even shot any dogs during this campaign.
No,
so
can you believe that?
I
can't believe that.
Although that did come up last night in the postgame show. Somebody said, short of Christy Nome shooting her dog, Rick Becker hiring Dylan Mulvaney might be the next biggest blunder in a campaign. Remember that from last night?
And then she went after Kelly Armstrong, or her ads went after him about the $150,000. And I just don't think any of that stuff sticks. I think the voters out there, we the people, whether you're in the world of politics.
Didn't he get called a Washington insider too or something? Just a usual back and forth.
It's a back and forth, and the people, whether you're deep into politics or you belong to the garage party like I do. I'm looking for, what are you going to do? What are you going to do to make my life better? What are you going to do to make the state better? Tell me about that. That's what we're looking for.
And I think
this other stuff, I just blow it off.
Yeah, well, and I think that's what our questions are going to revolve around tonight, are some of those things that really matter. Some of those big social issues that the Republicans in North Dakota care about, property taxes and fiscal spending and the legacy fund. These are things that are very important, and the state of North Dakota is in a very, very strong position. You take a look at what the balance sheet looks like here versus other states around the country. North Dakota State is in a very good place, and we, because of that, can leverage some opportunities right now to do some things where we can show the world, here's what you can do when you do it right. So I would think this would be a really fun time to be a governor. Yeah, there are challenges, no question, but there's a lot going for this state right now.
Folks, we're about ready to roll on out of here. You're going to have a good debate coming up here in just a few minutes on 970 WDAY, 93.1 FM radio, AM 1100 The Flag, 92.3 FM here in the eastern part of the state, western part of the state. It is Tioga, and I don't know the call out there.
AM 1090 and 92.7 FM.
There you go.
And on that Flag app, you can be on a pontoon right now and be listening to this, baby.
Exactly. Yeah. Get ready for a fun debate. You can watch it. You can listen to it.
Full hour with no breaks.
Here it comes. Your moderators, Scott Hennen, Steve Hallstrom. They got you next.
Election 2024. Tammy Miller, Kelly Armstrong. This is the North Dakota Republican Gubernatorial Debate on WDAY Radio and The Flag.
Welcome our listeners all across the great state of North Dakota, and those of you watching online or listening on the Flag app or the WDAY app. Maybe you're on a pontoon somewhere enjoying yourself and wanting to hear one last time for the candidates before you vote, either in early voting, which happens tomorrow in Cass County anyway, and also, of course, Monday, Election Day, right around the corner. Tonight, the two candidates for the Republican nomination for governor in North Dakota, Tammy Miller and Kelly Armstrong, join us. We have a full hour with no breaks. We'll each have a chance to tell us a little bit about themselves for a minute to start things off, and then we'll get to the questioning and get started tonight. With me is Steve Hallstrom, as always.
Yeah, great to be here with everybody tonight. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We had a number of people after our debate last night with the House candidates say, I really haven't had time to pay attention. I learned a lot about the candidates, and now I know who I'm going to vote for. So that's why we're here. And it's good to know that people are still making their minds up and learning about the candidates, even here as we get to the 11th hour of this campaign. So, Tammy, Kelly, thank you for coming by. We know that your days are very busy, and there's been a lot going on. So thanks for making time and for us and our audience here tonight.
We will open with a 1-minute statement from each of you, just opening comments as much as you'd like. You have a minute. Tammy Miller, you're first.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Scott and Steve, for hosting this debate tonight. And it's so great to have the border states building in the background. I think we all know that the country and our state has prospered under business leaders like President Trump and Governor Burgum. And I think our state will continue to prosper with a governor who has extensive business leadership, someone who has small town values, grew up in Brockett, worked in the family business, and then went on to pursue a career in business that lasted almost my entire lifetime. I worked at border states, created jobs, balanced budgets, solved problems for customers, and delivered real value. It's those experiences that I will bring to the governor's office. I will use that business experience to continue to grow and diversify our economy, to cut taxes, to reduce red tape, and protect our values and our conservative values here in the state. I look forward to bringing that business experience to the governor's office. I would be humbled to serve as your 34th governor and look forward to your vote on June 11th. Thank you.
Kelly?
Well, thanks, you guys, for doing this. I think, Steve, something you said is really important. When you get involved in campaigns and you're so engaged in doing it, you think everybody in the world is as well. But it's really not the case. We have a bunch of North Dakotans all across the state that are chasing kids to baseball practice, softball practice, living their lives. And we know this, that a lot of people make their decisions up on these elections in the 2 weeks leading up to it. So I think it's really important to be here and to have the opportunity to do this. So thank you all for doing this. It's just, and in some ways, 4 months seems like a lifetime ago. In some ways, 4 months seems like it was yesterday. And it's kind of been this wild, crazy world that we've been doing while we've been campaigning, but also how we've kind of approached our service to North Dakota. We got to serve in the state Senate for 3 terms, 6 years. I've been blessed and humbled to be the lone representative for the entire state in Congress since 2018. Grew up in Western North Dakota, started my first business in Grand Forks, went to school there, have traveled ever since, I think, have been traveling from one end of the state to the other, talking to and listening to North Dakotans. And we need to listen to our citizens to figure out what the future of North Dakota brings.
All right, time to get into our questions for the candidates here, and we will alternate the first answer going to each of you. And if you are referred to specifically and the other person's answer, you'll have 1 minute to respond to that. All right, so let's get started here, and we'll get things off to maybe a bit of a lively start here this evening on a Friday night. There have been, and I believe we said Tammy will go first. We did a little coin flip beforehand. There have been some strong accusations and sharp attack ads that have become part of this campaign. What is the most unfair thing that's been said about you in this campaign? Tammy, you're first.
Well, you are right. There have been a lot of negative things said in this campaign, and Kelly started negative ads almost immediately after I announced my run on February 15th. And a lot of his ads have said that I am a liar. And it is really offensive to hear those ads. I don't think anyone has a career like I have had. I don't think anyone would be asked to serve as lieutenant governor if they are a liar. So I think that has been the most offensive that I have heard, and it has been really upsetting to me because you even heard it from my dad. I mean, I don't lie.
All right. Kelly, you're next on this question.
Well, I think when you're campaigning, you don't have time for unfair. You deal with it, you react to it. Politics is a rough and tumble thing. To be clear, I only said she was a liar about things she was saying about me, so I'll continue to be down that path. I don't know if it's the most unfair, but I got a flyer that said I blew a hole in the North Dakota state budget and the lieutenant governor balanced the state budget. And as somebody who served in the legislature for 6 years, that's a little concerning to me, because every time we leave the legislative session, by law, we have to balance the budget. And we passed that at the legislature. The governor signs that bill. The reason the budget was blown up is because we had a Moody's analysis in an oil industry that actually tanked after we left the legislative session. So I don't know particularly how unfair it is, but either that's how that works and you put it in the paper anyway, or you don't know how that works, and then that's really concerning.
Tammy, you were, I guess indirectly, but referred to there in Kelly's response, so we'll give you a chance to respond if you'd like. 1 minute.
Well, the comments made about the budget relate to when my opponent left office. When Governor Burgum took office in 2016, he had to close a $1.7 billion gap in the budget. And now we can look at Washington and see what has been happening, too, under his leadership.
All right. And Kelly, a chance to respond if you'd like to there.
Every single time the legislature leaves side die, they balance the budget. We have Moody's analysts. We have people that come in. We're a commodity-based economy. Sometimes the oil business goes red. At some point in time, oil traded at negative $36 a barrel. That probably wasn't in the estimate, but the reality is it's just not how the state government works.
Okay.
All right, next question. This one first for Kelly. Does life begin at conception, and what, if any, exceptions would you support in regard to abortion?
Yes, life begins at exception, and I think you have to deal with a lot of those issues. I was proud to be the Senate Judiciary Chair when we passed a lot of the laws that are going into place right now. How those exceptions exist in North Dakota law, the biggest concern is to making sure that they work on the ground. It's okay if it works in a hearing room. It's not okay if it doesn't work to where it's at. But I think when you're talking about abortion policy, the number one thing you need to do, and I grew up Catholic. My mom was a Catholic kindergarten teacher. Every single thing we do about abortion policy should be to make sure we have less abortions tomorrow than we did yesterday.
What about exceptions?
Oh, I'm okay with exceptions for life of the mother, rape, and incest, because I think that's where the North Dakota population is, and I think that gets us in a position to have less abortions tomorrow than we did yesterday.
Tammy, your question, same. Does life begin at conception, and what, if any, exceptions would you support in regard to abortion?
Indeed, life does begin at conception. I, too, was raised Catholic, went to church every Sunday with my parents, had brunch with my grandparents every Sunday after church. Life definitely begins at conception. We do have a new abortion ban in the state of North Dakota that has very narrow exceptions, and I completely agree and support those exceptions.
Okay. Next question, and Tammy, you'll start on this. North Dakota's legacy fund currently has a balance of approximately $10.55 billion. That means at 5% interest, the fund would generate, theoretically, about $530 million a year of spendable income for the state of North Dakota. What do you believe that money should be used for?
Well, first of all, the earnings off of the legacy fund are calculated on a 5-year time frame, not just year to year. So it's not exactly that much for earnings, but those earnings should be invested in things that are making a lasting difference in the state of North Dakota, or returned to taxpayers so they have more money in their own pockets. We did that last year with the tax cuts for individual income tax, as well as some of the property tax relief. So I think we can use it for tax relief, and if we don't use it for tax relief, we should be investing in long-term investments in the state of North Dakota that will be lasting and make a difference.
Can I follow up just to make sure I understood your answer about how the interest is calculated? If you've got a principal of $10.55 billion, if you could invest that at 5%, in theory, you'd have $530. Tell us how it does work.
So we look at the value in each of the last 5 years and take a percent of that. So
for
it might have been
amount.
$6 billion 5 years ago. So you take the account balance in each of those 5 years, average that out, and we take the earnings off of that.
Understood.
Because with the earnings, we're not just getting interest. We're investing in a lot of equities too, and some years those will be up, some years they will be down.
Yeah.
So that's why we look at more than 1 year or 2 years at a time.
Thanks for the details.
Yes.
Kelly, your answer to that same question. What we're getting at, what should that money be used for?
Well, first, I think we need to make sure that the North Dakota people know what it's being used for. It's the 21st century. The transparency of how that money goes is going to be really important. Secondly, the Legacy Fund was originally intended to replace a finite resource. Now, we're still leaving 80% of the oil in the ground in the Bakken, and hopefully through technology and innovation and right government policy, we'll figure out how to get more of that out. But we've become addicted to energy money in the state, and rightfully so. So we better make sure we have something that exists when that goes away. What it shouldn't be used to be invested in is anything that's competing with existing business. Because the last thing in the world you want to do is being a private business that has somebody who's in the same business as you getting state dollars across the street dealing with those types of issues. So being able to invest it and making sure you can show the North Dakota citizens the value of it becomes really, really important, because to be quite honest, people have started to figure out it's probably cheaper to try and change the North Dakota Constitution than it is to be up on TV in San Francisco for a weekend. Mm-hmm. So if we're not open, transparent, and doing things for the benefit of North Dakota citizens, both in state and growing the funds, we run the real risk of people coming back and getting it.
Got your answer?
Yes, sir.
All right, we're good to go to the next question. This one goes first for Kelly. North Dakota is being targeted by the federal government with numerous new rules and regulations. Should our response continue to be combining efforts with other states on the legal battles, or should we do this on our own? And with the billions of state revenue that is at stake, is a $15 million legal fund enough for this fight?
Both. And I think one of the answers is there's two different ways you join lawsuits. We've seen this happen and we've watched it happen. Is one, you join other states in doing it, and two, you join yourself and can participate while other states are doing it. There's a lot of talk about lawyers and being a former lawyer, and I've heard that plenty, but if you look across the country, Greg Abbott's a lawyer, Ron DeSantis is a lawyer, Landry's a lawyer in Louisiana, and most of the fights we're winning against the federal government are coming from the states. But North Dakota is unique. We have EPA primacy with carbon capture. We have FAA line of sight waivers when we get into those types of things. So just relying on other states to do the litigation is not the right approach. Joining with other states, combining resources, because it doesn't matter if you're in Wyoming, Montana, or North Dakota. When you have an EPA clean air emission, it affects all of us. It just sometimes affects North Dakota a little differently. And I think more importantly, we have to really, really work to injunctive relief. The biggest difference between West Virginia and the EPA was after that case was decided, which was a really good decision for North Dakota, it was 8 years later. Our utilities and our power plants were already existing under the current law. They didn't, going forward, it's great. But they didn't exactly change their business model and deal all of those things while they waited for the appeal. Contrast that with Waters of the U.S., which I've been talking about my entire time in politics, but it's never been law because Wayne Stenjum and other attorney generals got an injunction right away. So we've had a lot of fight about it. It's been rewritten 3 different times, once good and twice bad, but it's never actually been the law of the land, and that's made a huge difference for North Dakota farmers, ranchers, and energy producers.
Okay, just be clear on the second half of this. With billions at stake in this battle that you're talking about, is $15 million enough?
No, probably not, but you want to be careful about how you do it, and you want to bring in some experts to do it, and I would say, and I mean this, and I understood when Governor Burgum put his budget out, and I think I partially agree with him. If Trump is the president, you need less of litigation than if Joe Biden's the president, except there's a reason we call it the permanent bureaucracy. I think under Trump, we might want to be even more aggressive with how we do this because we have a real opportunity to actually strike back things that are affecting our people on the ground in North Dakota.
Same question for you, Tammy.
The real solution is electing Donald Trump to be our next president. We see every day the regulations that are being pushed down from the Biden administration. Our teams are spending a lot of time pushing back to see the impact on the state of North Dakota, how it's killing our fossil fuels and agricultural industries, and we absolutely will need to increase that budget if we don't have a change in the White House.
So again, to be clear, go it alone on these legal fights or combine with other states?
Well, we've seen it both be effective. Some things we fight our own with the EPA. We see that a lot with Department of Environmental Quality. But there are many situations where we have to join with other states to be more effective. So it's both. And
the $15 million currently allotted, would you support that amount? Is that about right, or should there be more dollars to do this?
Well, if we don't have a change in Washington, D.C., we will have a bigger number in the budget.
What would you support?
Well, I think we will need to get more feedback from the agencies to look at exactly how their agencies are being impacted. I just can't pull a number out of the air.
All right.
All right, next question. Tammy, you'll get the first answer at this one. Do you support the Summit Carbon Solutions Pipeline and other carbon capture projects that are being promoted as ways to open new markets for agriculture and energy?
Absolutely. There is a demand for low carbon products. This is a good opportunity for energy and agriculture in the state of North Dakota, and I completely support it, especially when I'm a business leader and I see supply and demand. What I don't support is the approach with eminent domain. I firmly believe in private property rights. They should not be compromised for this capital opportunity. We need to protect private property rights and would not support eminent domain to get a pipeline done.
All right. Kelly?
Yeah, I support all pipelines. I think it's the safest way to transport anything. I've spent enough time in D.C. to understand that I will, as long as I'm there, I will vote against the repower provision and the production tax credit for renewable energy. The problem is it's going to get 218 votes in the House and 60 votes in the Senate. And as long as those government constructs that actually allow renewable energy to trade on the grid for cheaper than it costs to produce, we have to do something to keep coal-fired electricity available, and 45Q and direct pay is a part of that thing. But I have a long history of supporting property rights and landowner rights. I remember when we were putting all this pipe in the ground in western North Dakota, and some of my friends in the oil business were very frustrated with some landowners in western North Dakota and wanted to start talking about quick take. and those types of things. And I was on the natural resources, and they came up to me and they wanted me to help them with this bill. And I looked at them, I said, not only will I not help you, I will vote against it, and I will advocate against it. And so I think utilitarian infrastructure is always unpopular locally, and eminent domain should be used at the absolute last resort.
But so you agree it should remain in the law
well,
as a provision?
I think whatever the law is, when people invest money in, you have to keep it that way. Otherwise, you're going to drive away long-term investment for long-term infrastructure projects together. Whether it should have been there or not is a question, I think, for the legislature. Unfortunately, I was in D.C. fighting for those things. But as the law stands, you have to deal with it. But I mean, you're talking minor percentage points of when you should be allowed to use it. These things saying we're going to use 25% of the people who don't sign and get eminent domain is absolutely a non-starter for me.
And Tammy, to be clear, you say you oppose eminent domain. Do you want that law changed?
I oppose eminent domain.
So the law should be changed in North Dakota to eliminate that possibility?
Yes.
Okay. Next question is for Kelly first. There's been a lot of discussion about mental health concerns in our state, but not necessarily enough concrete plans by state leaders to address the problem. Please give 2 specific examples that you would advocate for if elected governor.
Expand telehealth. We have to deliver these services with the services we have, not the services we wish we had. And what I mean by that is there are not enough people going to college right now to fill the open mental health, addiction counseling, school counseling positions that exist in the entire country. So we have to figure out a way to do it. It's one of the few things, if not the only thing good that actually came out of COVID, was figuring out how to expand and develop mental health. But that also can't just be in-state telehealth. We have to figure out ways to break down those barriers so we can utilize resources all the way across. And then I think the other answer is where you have these positions and you absolutely have to fill them. We have to deal with some things I've voted against in D.C. because I don't think they make sense in D.C. Again, if you have empty open mental health facility or positions all across the country, a student buy down at the local level doesn't give us an advantage because, well, I love this state. If you've never been here and you circle Naples, Florida, or Watford City on a map, and you're from Fresno, it's hard to get them up here. But with the tremendous resources we have in North Dakota, I think we have the opportunity to recruit and attract people.
So the second specific example would be?
Figure out a way to incentivize people to get here. Once we get them here, we keep them. Turns out they like our towns. They like our communities. They like not having to lock their doors at night. They like to be able to coach their kids' baseball team. It's the original recruitment effort. And then we got to get high school kids to want to go into those professions.
What kind of incentivize? You talking about some dollars?
Yeah, I think there's real opportunities to do, public-private partnerships on student loan buy downs. If you get 3 years guaranteed in a rural community, I think there are real incentives that we can do to bring some of those things in.
All right. And Tammy, same question for you again. A lot of discussion about mental health concerns in our state, but very few concrete plans have been floated by state leaders to address the problem. Please give 2 specific steps that you would advocate for if elected governor.
We do see the challenge with mental health across the state, and especially in our correctional systems. We have lots of addiction and mental health that are improperly dealt with in corrections versus in private facilities. I really believe that, first off, we need to look at licensure. I know of several people who are working in our state who need to work under supervision. They have 20 plus years of experience and need to work under supervision to get a license in North Dakota to practice. Why are they qualified to practice in Nebraska for 20 years and they can't practice in the state of North Dakota? I think we need universal licensure in the state of North Dakota for folks who are treating individuals with mental health challenges, but I think it's across the board. I mean, if you are licensed to be an attorney or a CPA in another state, why isn't it good enough in North Dakota? We need to have universal licensure to solve a lot of our workforce challenges. I think we also need to look for that second answer on mental health is a different way to deliver mental health services. And telehealth is part of it, but the institutional settings and the correctional facilities where we're delivering mental health services are too expensive. We need to look for more cost-effective solutions to do that outside of those facilities.
Next question, Steve.
Very good. Next question, and there's a trend going on here that my questions are first answered by Tammy. So recently, the superintendent of the 3rd largest public school system in the state, right here in Fargo, said his district would not abide by newly written state law when it comes to requiring the parents be notified when their child is undergoing a gender transition that the school is aware of, among some other things. If you were in office when this happened, would you get involved after hearing from the superintendent, and if so, how?
I think it is extremely concerning when a superintendent does not want to abide by state law. We would definitely get involved and take corrective action. Right now, don't know for sure what that corrective action would be, but a superintendent should not be able to make that decision. This is a law we have on the books, and it is on the books to protect our children and families.
All right, Kelly?
Yeah, the law is the law is the law. If they're doing it and you're not doing it, I think the single best way you do it is call the legislature in and take away money. If you want to deal with it, you get in protracted litigation and you get into all of those other issues, which is, I mean, there's a reason we have an attorney general. There's a reason we have those things, but you don't only get to follow the laws you like. We have a system of government that is set up, and if a law is passed by the legislature, it absolutely has to be followed.
Are either of you familiar with the law and what I've understood at least that there's nothing punitive in it, that the law would need to be changed to be able to come back against the Fargo school system. Tammy, do you know if there's something in the law? No?
I am not aware of anything specifically in the law.
Well, I think that's one of the benefits of serving in the legislature, both at the state and the federal level. I have looked at lots of other people when they write things, and I'm like, okay, great, but what's the consequence? I mean, writing something into code that makes you feel better without any enforcement mechanism is actually bad policy making, and it's something I've been proud to work on and deal with. So if you're going to put a law into the books, you better have a way to enforce it.
And I want to follow up on your answer, Kelly, just to make sure I understand. When the last part of that question was, would you get involved, and if so, how? And you talked about some things that could be done. What would you specifically do?
Well, depending on where you're at, I would tell them, hey, I mean, you're getting a bunch of state funding for your education programs in Fargo, and if your point is you're not going to follow the law, then you can fund your own education program. I mean, the single biggest way you deal with any of these issues is you deal with money. And how things are funded and all of that. And it's the quickest and most efficient way to deal with those things. By the way, you will get to a table in a really quick hurry figuring out what the solution to that problem is.
And you would personally deliver that message as governor?
100%. Okay. You don't get to not follow a law just because you don't like it.
Is that something?
There's lots of laws that have been passed both at the federal level that I don't like. Turns out you still have to deal with them. Otherwise, you're in a real bad situation.
Would you have to do that legislatively?
Well, it depends. You probably want to fix the law so you build in a consequence to it, and then you wouldn't have to call anybody back in. But if there's no consequence to it, then you better decide how you want to handle it. But that's that's a conversation you have to have with majority leaders in both chambers and actually have an idea of what you're trying to do, because you don't want to turn it into a 3-day circus when you're bringing everybody back in either. So you better have a mechanism for what your plan is.
Tammy, Kelly's answered that quite a bit. Is there anything you'd like to add to this conversation?
My concern about pulling back funding is the impact it might have on all of the students. I think there needs to be an approach for consequence with that superintendent and with the school board, not necessarily impacting the students.
Okay.
All right, next question. Kelly first, then Tammy. Signatures are currently being gathered. We'd like to spend some time on this question, too, and really get to understand your position on it. But the signatures that are currently being gathered for a property tax measure could be on the November ballot. Would you support it? And if it passes, how can the state find the necessary resources to foot the bill?
I don't support it, and I'll give you 2 reasons. There's lots of them, but I think 2 are pretty easy. One, we have a lot of out-of-state landowners already. It's a really good place. If you like to pheasant hunt and you find out that we don't have property taxes in western North Dakota, there's a pretty good way to park your money in an inflationary environment, and there's no real contribution. And secondly, we're in Fargo right now, and if you go down this road, Fargo, Grand Forks, Minot, Bismarck do okay in this. But, the city of Fargo has a lawyer. They can go down to Bismarck. They can lobby. Our smaller communities in North Dakota share one senator with 5 or 6 other communities, and they're going to have to come to Bismarck every 2 years to beg for food or beg for law enforcement, emergency medical services, water, sewer, and not the least of which is schools. And to have to do that and deal with those issues, I think is incredibly problematic. If it gets on the ballot and passes, we're going to have a lot of code to rewrite just on how we do cost share, how we do grant programs, how we deal with all of these different issues that the state works with the local municipality and how they deal with funding mechanism and funding streams. And it's going to be a massive undertaking if it occurs. I would just say this: I think it'll probably get on the ballot, and I think if everybody assumes it's not going to pass, they should pay a little more attention, because people are really, really angry about property taxes right now.
Tammy, same question?
We have been to more than 50 communities across the state, and we do hear a lot about property tax. So we do need real, sustainable property tax reform. The initiative that's being proposed is not the answer. My concern is loss of local control, and where's the funding going to come from? I know there's been some things thrown around, but the state doesn't have an extra $2.5 billion just sitting around to stick in the budget next biennium. If this is passed, this is all that we will talk about next legislative session, trying to figure out where the funding is going to come from. And there will be a lot of funding that goes away to subsidize property taxes. And I agree with my opponent. If this happens, it's going to kill small towns because larger communities will have the representation. They will be able to get to Bismarck and fight for what they need in their budget that is replacing property tax. Small communities won't. So I hope small communities, large communities, people are getting out and are talking to their residents, telling them what the negative consequences could be if this property tax initiative passes. The headline sounds good, eliminate property tax, but the solution is very problematic.
Just on the final part of the question, though, if it passes, what specifically would you do to find the necessary resources? What would you support?
Well, I think we will have to start looking at every sales tax exemption. We will be looking at prairie dog funds. We will be looking at every bucket to see where we can get the money because we're not going to get it out of the general fund. There just isn't that much in the general fund to do. If we did that, if it came out of the general fund, we would eliminate, a third of the budgets for all of the other state agencies.
Yeah, everything has to change. And I think the session's probably longer than 81 days, too. It all changes. And by the way, that's at a good price for soybeans, or at least a decent price for soybeans and a good price for oil. What if oil's under $50 a barrel and soybeans are under $6 a bushel? Now try and figure out how you're going to deal with some of these issues as you move forward when the number 1 and 2 industries in the state are absolutely struggling. This is a really, but the reason it's here is because people are so frustrated, and I take part of the blame because I was in the legislature. I mean, we've done a really good job of buying down property taxes. We just haven't done a very good job of lowering property taxes.
So on that front, first to Tammy, then to Kelly, okay, if not this, what? How do you address the concern you say you're hearing from folks about property tax? What would your plan be to lower property taxes?
Well, I am a CPA, have a lot of experience with budgets, numbers, modeling. So we need to sit down with local jurisdictions. We need to look at budgets. We need to figure out how to do more with less in these local jurisdictions. Nobody wants to give up any services. And I think we need to eliminate red tape. I mentioned earlier this week with Steve, we were in northeastern North Dakota. There was a county commissioner who also was a farmer. He built a shop for $75,000, building it through the county, and with all of our red tape, it was going to cost $200,000. Why does it cost more than double to build it at the county versus a farmer? So how do we go in and eliminate a lot of that red tape? I think we also need to look at exemptions and other opportunities to provide some relief because we have to have sustainable property tax reform that is going to be impactful. Otherwise, we're going to see young couples and seniors who just won't be able to own a home because they can't afford the property tax.
Kelly, same question.
State buys down roughly about a third of all the property tax in the state for locals. It's time to start talking about caps on property tax budgets. You get into mills, you get into a lot of, and right in Fargo, I mean, some of the fight is about property taxes, some of the fight is about specials. I don't think the state government should get involved in the special fight in a local community, but I think if we're going to continue to do the buy down at a third, we can set property tax budget caps on existing property. And I agree on exemptions. I mean, the more you broaden your base, the more you do all of those things, and the lower you make it for everybody, the better off you're going to be. But if local communities and municipalities want to take advantage of the 1/3 buy down the state offers them, we've been good at the carrot. We just have never been really good at having the conversation about the stick. Because if we keep throwing money into it, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to continue to valuation. We have to be able to have a top end, a ceiling on it.
And what would that look like?
You can do. I mean, there's a lot of different ways, and you work with municipalities, you work with small town city commissions, county commissions, large town, but you're starting to talk like a 3% annual growth cap and all of that. It won't curb what's happened already, but it'll make it impossible for these 40% valuation increases that occur and that get people really frustrated.
Did you want to add some of that?
Yeah, I think there's two other other ideas to pursue, and it's to grow the base. We look at McKenzie County, 85% of their property tax is paid by corporations, not residents. Corporations, not individuals. So if we grow our base, grow our economy, we'll grow the property tax base, and it'll be better for all of the citizens of North Dakota. I think another big thing, and we see it a lot here in Fargo, is let's do more urban infill. There's lots of areas in communities where we should be demolishing old buildings and doing infill versus building on the fringe, because it takes more law enforcement, it takes more fire protection when you're continuing to grow outside of the city.
How do you direct a city to do that as governor?
Well, you can provide some incentives. I mean, Border States was a perfect example. This is a new building for the corporate headquarters, but this is not the building I'm talking about. I'm talking about the sales unit in Fargo especially. We moved into a new building that was built on 25th and 6th or 7th, and that building was put in an area where there were blighted buildings, there were homeless people and drug dealers living in those buildings. We had some incentives from the city. We built a building there, cleaned up the neighborhood, and when we did the ribbon cutting, the mayor said, "God bless Border States for cleaning up this neighborhood." That's what small incentives can do to help us do more urban infill and quit building on the fringe and growing the costs for city and county government.
Kelly, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I don't even particularly disagree with that. I just know people who live in Fargo is one example, but there are people who live in Dickinson and smaller communities that aren't interested. I mean, you don't move to Richardson to live in downtown Richardson or do those things. So we have to be very careful. At the same time, we're talking about all this property tax reform, and I think we both she said it earlier, so I think we agree. We want to make sure that we still don't take away local control and autonomy for how they develop their cities.
I do want to follow up on that piece of that, and Tammy, I'll start with you. I've heard the conversation a lot, and we all have about it would be a loss of local control. That's heard many times in this conversation. It can be argued that if your property tax bill, which normally goes, say, here to the Cass County, city of Fargo, being paid by residents, now paid by state government, Bismarck, instead of the local resident, and if there are additional taxes or fees that need to be assessed on the people of the community in order to do more things that the city needs to do or increase budgets, that still has to come from the city, and it could be still assessed to landowners, property owners as a fee or a tax. So how do we lose local control in that scenario? Tammy, start with you and then Kelly.
Well, in that scenario, you haven't solved the problem because you've kind of frozen the budget and getting it subsidized by the state for the old property tax, and then you're piling on all these other fees. So that isn't sustainable, permanent property tax reform. You're getting the same money just in a different way. So I don't think the citizens in any community would be happy with that model.
Kelly, your thoughts on how does this local control issue play out?
Without property tax, I think your base money is still coming for the state. So your basic sewer, water, school, law enforcement, emergency services is going to come from the state. And I've just been around government long enough to know that when you centralize the funding formula in a meaningful way, you centralize control. And you're going to have whatever law enforcement is using in Bismarck or Fargo is what's going to be dictated in Richardson or Belfield or Oaks. And you're going to we can save money if we buy more of these units, whatever they are, SCBA for fire departments, certain equipment and ambulances, and they're going to be forced into those. They're going to be forced into that as a cost-saving mechanism, and that will really happen immediately. And I also agree, you're still going to have to do specials and all of those different things for other extra things, but the baseline funding is going to come from the state, which means the baseline control is going to come from the state.
So just so I understand your answer, your assumption, for lack of a better way of saying it, is that if the city runs out of money, the county runs out of money, they're not going to continue to go to the residents. They're going to go to Bismarck and the state government.
Well, they're going to get if you take away property taxes, you're going to have a state budget for those services. If they're doing specials for other things, that's great. But when you have when you are getting state money for your baseline services, if we think that over the course of 2 years or 4 years or 6 years, that's not going to come with uniform strings, then I've never seen government work any other way. So I would be very cautious that it would this time.
Tammy, anything else that you'd like to add to that?
I think we need to be clear with our voters that this property tax initiative will not take away special assessments. This is property tax only. So don't expect the special assessments to go off your bill.
Probably go up.
Possibly.
Thank you. You've helped us talk through this issue thoroughly, and we appreciate that. Next question, and Tammy, this will be yours to answer first. Governors across our great country had a difficult job during COVID. We all know that. Some residents wanted our governor, Doug Burgum, to be more forceful in limiting business activity and human interaction during that time. Some wanted him to be completely hands-off. Do you believe that Governor Burgum's approach was too heavy-handed, not strong enough, or about right?
Well, I joined Team ND on April 1st of 2020. That was a Wednesday. On Monday, I was embedded with the National Guard at Frayne Barrack working on the COVID mission. We did our best to respond to the COVID pandemic. It was a 100-year pandemic, and no one gave us a playbook. We had many, many citizens of North Dakota coming to the governor's office, asking for advice, asking us what to do. I think we had a real light touch of government. Our business closures, our school closures were some of the shortest in the country, especially when we closed off high school athletics. That was extremely short because we heard from so many parents and community members about how important that was for the students and the community. So when you ask if it was too much, not enough, or just the right amount, in hindsight, and looking at the prosperity of our state compared to many others, I would say it was just the right amount.
Kelly.
This is the easiest pot shot to take, and I'm not gonna. And the reason is because we didn't know what was going on. Particularly at the beginning of COVID, we didn't know what was going on. But as COVID continued to go on, I think there are things everybody made decisions in how they made them, but I always use this as an example. If you take Minnesota from St. Cloud west, you take North Dakota, and you take South Dakota, you have basically three almost identical population bases. And you have three governors that absolutely treated COVID as differently as you could. Walsh was as draconian as you could be. Governor Burgum tried to play the numbers and did it in a really thoughtful way. And Kristi Noem was like, we're going to let it rip. By the time you're done with the whole pandemic, infection rates are almost identical in all three of those population bases. And as somebody who had 2 kids in 4 different school systems during COVID, you lose credibility. And I don't particularly blame this because this happened all over the country. But you lose credibility when you send your kid to school for 2.5 days a week and then send all the kids to football practice together. Or you lose credibility when you shut down bars at 11 p.m. at night. And that's where, and so we started losing trust. And as COVID went on longer and longer, we started to lose more and more trust. And I do think that when you're a small town business owner and you're not allowed to have your business open, but you can go to Walmart or Target or those types of things, we really created an animosity that we have and lost faith in institutions, lost faith in our government, and we have to get that back. And I'm not even particularly blaming everybody for the front end of this, but as this continued to move on, civil liberties only matter when they matter. This is as mad as I've ever gotten in a congressional hearing when I found out the CDC was trying to track whether people were going to church during quarantine. Civil liberties don't matter Tuesday at 1 o'clock when everything's perfect. Civil liberties only matter when the government is trying to engage in things that are trying to restrict your civil liberties. So I think hopefully we learned a lot of things of what not to do, even with good intentions during the last pandemic, and we never do any of those things again.
All right.
I do want to just add to that. My opponent was in Washington, D.C. during this time, and every week we were on a call with the White House, with President Trump or Vice President Pence, getting direction from the White House on the COVID response.
Okay. Kelly, you get a chance to add something too?
No, I mean, if you want my answer, the world failed at COVID. Government structures from smart people to very liberal people to conservative people failed at it, and we should never allow that to happen again.
Okay. So the answer then would be too heavy-handed of the 3 options.
Yeah, at the end. I think I give everybody a pass in the first 3-6 months of that thing. I mean, there's a reason it was called a novel coronavirus and everybody was trying to word. And you have a wife from Scandinavia. I mean, every 3 months, Norway was the worst or the best or the worst or the best. And it was almost like it was a highly contagious disease that you could pass on to somebody without knowing you had it, and control was a little bit of an illusion.
So the question was specifically about Governor Burgum's approach. Too strong, about right, too light?
Fine at the beginning, too heavy at the end.
Okay.
But I mean, like I said, I'm here armchair quarterbacking at the end. Everybody was making tough decisions at a tough time. I mean, we had kids and teachers trying to stand up remote learning, and a lot of people did a lot of really good work in the middle of all of that. But I think if you look back on it now, people are really angry, and that's part of it.
Okay.
All right, the next question is, if you were elected governor, name one significant difference between your administration and the previous Burgum administration. That's for Kelly first.
I think, this isn't even necessarily a criticism, I think accessibility. I think I have the same cell phone as when I was an American Legion baseball coach and a criminal defense attorney. I thrive on being immediately available to people. I've done it all through being in the state Senate, state party chair, and in Congress. It drives my staff nuts because I take screenshots of text and say, handle this, make sure it gets on the calendar, and trying to deal with that. I've worked really, really hard my entire adult life not to sit behind a computer screen all day long, and that is going to continue to move all the way through. And we're going to be, we're going to open up and make sure that people, have real immediate access, and that is just something I pride myself in, and I think it's the one thing I can say I will be really, really good at.
Would you say that when you're contrasting with the Burgum administration that they have not been accessible enough?
I don't think they will be. I don't think they're as accessible as I will be.
Got it. And how about you, Tammy?
I think the biggest difference between me and Governor Burgum is he has more of a tech background. My background is more accounting, finance. I'm a CPA, so have really deep knowledge of the budget process, appropriations. So I think that accounting background will be something that's a little bit different than what we've had with Governor Burgum. But I think on the accessibility piece, I do want to add a little bit on that because I don't know of anyone who is more accessible than Governor Burgum. He is available by phone or text 24/7. If anyone has ever worked with the governor, you know he is texting all night long. The guy never sleeps. So I don't know how anyone could be more accessible than Governor Burgum.
Just a follow-up question on that. How about directly dealing with legislatures? Governor Burgum was active in campaigns against legislators that he saw as unhelpful. Would you continue that practice? Kelly, you first, and then Tammy.
I've never campaigned against an incumbent Republican in my entire time in government, but I'm going to play by the same rules everybody else does, and I'm pretty good at it too. And I've told people this at town halls and district conventions. I mean, if we're all going to play by the same rules, or we're all going to play by the same rules. There's some things going on in legislative races right now that are absolutely unacceptable. And if you think as the at least ceremonial head of the Republican Party, I'm going to sit those fights out when they're going on, I will not. But I don't think, we have term limits already. We have a lot of those issues. I think campaigning against, and maybe it's because I've spent 6 years fighting against AOC and Nancy Pelosi and Eric Swalwell, that I don't view other Republicans, even who I disagree with once in a while, as the enemy in this fight. I think we know who the enemy is, but if we're all going to play by the same rules. And so I have never done it. Up until this point, I have never done it. But if I'm going to have other people doing it and they're going against incumbents and people who I think are my friends and good legislators, I'm not sitting that out.
And how about specifically during the session, out of the session, anything different in your dealing with the legislature?
I have served in that body. I have said this before, and I know this. When I was the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, you know where the governor's opinion of my legislation was on my list of top 10 priorities? It wasn't on it. It wasn't on the top 10. So I believe that the single best way to handle that, nobody in North Dakota wants to hear about petty fights about important issues. And I've been a part of those with Governor Burgum, Governor Dalrymple. They occur. And the best way to prepare against that is to have open lines of communication on the front end. Find out what your legislators' priorities are, because it turns out we'll probably agree 85 to 90% of the time.
Tam, same question.
So I have not been involved in any of those campaigns, and I would not do anything differently moving forward. You can check my track record of political giving, and you'll see that I have not done any of that. As far as relationships with the legislature, I served as the president of the Senate this last session. So with the Senate, at least, I have really great relationships. And I have been alongside the governor in a lot of meetings with legislators, with our leadership, as well as with the leaders of appropriation.
All right, Steve, next question.
All right. This question I would ask Tammy. We'll go first on this one. We hear a lot of messages about you on ads and campaign speeches, but if someone simply asked you to speak from the heart about who you are, who would you say you are?
Well, first of all, it's really kind of bothersome when I hear people say that, she's so professional and she's not approachable. They should come out to a town hall meeting and look at the engagement we have with community leaders and citizens across the state. And I think about border states. I ran an employee-owned company. The employee owners loved me. I went out to the branches. I was always accessible. And when I would go to the branches, I learned this from Paul Madsen, who was my boss for many years. When you walked into the counter and you visited with every single person at the counter. You went to the warehouse. You met with drivers. You walked around the entire branch. You didn't just come in and sit with the branch manager and visit with the branch manager. And you get to know the individuals. You get to understand what was going on in their personal lives, if they had a significant other, what their kids were doing. And I really love connecting with people. So it is interesting when people say, she's not approachable. She's this very, very brilliant, but unapproachable CEO. And she had to do that because she was in a tough industry. Well, you know what? You're not successful. You don't build a big company without being able to develop really strong relationships with employees, customers, and vendors. And even today, after being away from border states for 4 years, some of those customers and vendors are still really dear friends because of those relationships we created along the way.
All right. Kelly, if someone asked, who would you say you are?
Husband, dad, volunteer, hunter. In that order. Maybe not always in that order.
Next question. No.
The greatest privilege of my life is being husband to my wife and dad to my two kids. I've always actively engaged in a community, whether it was being a volunteer firefighter, serving on a hospital board, running the baseball program, coaching 12-year-old travel team when I didn't even have kids yet, working towards making sure the community I live in is as good as it possibly can be. And if I have any free time, it's hunting season. And it can be ducks, it can be pheasants, it can be deer, it can be snow geese, it can be whatever if you have something that we can go out and have good dog work, or I can take my kid or go with my dad, I am free that day.
A follow-up question on that related to the advertising war back and forth. Tammy, you first, and Kelly, anything that has been said about you in the campaign ads that you think has been most unfair?
I think we already had that question.
We did have a question very similar to that.
That was one of our first questions.
Do you want to add another one to the list?
She's first, but
it's what comes up often on the radio shows that Steve and I do. That people they dislike the back and forth, and so, but other times they're believed. So
yeah, as I said earlier, it's being called a liar. As a CPA, as a very successful business leader, being called a liar is, very offensive and even hurtful.
I don't know what insider mutual fund stock dumping is. So I am completely unaware of what it was. I had to Google it. It doesn't exist. So I thought that was a pretty interesting take.
What is it, Tammy?
There was a bill that he voted against to prohibit insider trading. And a few days later, he did an insider trade.
I sold a mutual fund, and that's what I did.
All right. Steve, next question.
These next couple of questions come from listeners that have sent in questions to our programs. Would you advocate for North Dakota opting out of daylight savings time? Kelly, I think this goes to you first this time.
Yes. I mean, I don't think it would be. I mean, it's shocking. Even when this bill comes up in D.C., we get more interaction on that bill than possibly anything. But yes, but I also could tell you there are about 5 different members of Congress that when you even remotely come out and talk about this, we'll talk about heart attacks, car accidents. And so whenever you say you're ready to get rid of daylight savings time, you get I call them nerds. They're really good friends of mine that will sit you down and deal with that. I am fine getting rid of daylight savings time. I don't think it would be priority number 1 in the Armstrong administration.
All right. Tammy.
Well, I lived in a state that did not have daylight savings time, and I loved it. I lived in Arizona for about 3 years, running the Southwest region for border states, and it was really great. I think it is really odd, too, in the state of North Dakota that once you get to Dickinson, the time changes. So it would be great if the entire state was on the same time.
You've all answered versions of this next question, but this came directly from a listener that wanted to hear from your heart. 3 examples of experience that you would bring to this in leading North Dakota as governor. Who's first? Tammy, you're first.
Oh, okay. So, well, the biggest experience is my experience as a business leader. I think a lot of elected officials who have had that business experience in Washington, D.C. or in state government have been hugely successful. I also think a lot of the experiences that I've had giving back to the community have been extremely helpful. I have been very involved in volunteerism, especially in the Fargo-Moorhead community, and also doing a lot of fundraising for capital projects. I think understanding the needs of a lot of nonprofits will help us be better as a state and help bring more services and solve more challenges that we have in the state by bringing in those nonprofits. And I think the last item is I have worked really hard at border states and in state government to build good teams, and you can't achieve a goal and a mission and deliver a strategy without a good team. So I think that experience of attracting and retaining good talent would be extremely helpful.
Kelly, same question. What 3 examples of your experience would serve you best in leading North Dakota as governor?
I've been fighting for civil liberties and against the government my entire adult life. I started as a criminal defense attorney, moved into the state Senate, and went to Congress to deal with this. I think I know exactly where, particularly in these fights that are coming with the federal government. I think my 6 years in D.C. have really prepared me for knowing which pressure points are the most effective and where to go after it. I've worked really hard to build relationships with the Republicans all across the state of North Dakota, both in the party level and the legislative level. I think that's going to be incredibly beneficial. And then I think the best experience I have for most people is I absolutely spend as every free waking moment doing the things that North Dakotans care so deeply about, whether it's being on the lake, whether it's following a black lab around a CRP field, whether it's, no matter what your job is, if you have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old, your side hustle is the same. You're chasing kids to baseball, you're going to soccer, you're dropping kids off at governor's camp, which is a little surreal when you're running for governor, by the way, and you're doing all of those things and watching what we have the opportunity to do for our greatest resource, which is every kid in a high school from one end of the state to the other, and making sure we provide that opportunity for them.
All right, next question comes from me, and I want to ask about your support for Donald Trump as future president of our country. Since the last debate was held, I believe the verdict came in the state of New York that says that Donald Trump is officially a convicted felon. You both have at times during the campaign expressed support for President Trump to be the Republican nominee and go forward to lead our country. Do you still support Donald Trump in that position? And if so, why? Or if not, why? Tammy, start with you.
Absolutely continue to support Donald Trump. This whole trial was a sham. It never would have happened if he wasn't running for president. And he is a great person. He has been a great president. He loves North Dakota. He supports policies that are good for the state of North Dakota, supporting agriculture, energy, and national security. This would not have happened if President Trump was not seeking the presidential seat. This whole lawsuit was a sham, and he couldn't get a fair trial in New York. Think about the demographics in New York. There's no way he would get a fair trial. So I completely support Donald Trump, and we need to make sure we all vote for him and get him elected in November.
Kelly.
Just so before our last debate, I spent my debate prep talking to D.C. reporters about what the jury verdict was and trying to figure it out. I spent 10 years doing this. I still don't know what he was convicted of. Before tonight, I spent the time talking to some other members of Congress about what it means if a juror's cousin put a post on Facebook. I don't know if you're all aware, but it sounds like one of the jurors in the Trump trial in New York had told somebody the day before the verdict was was handed down that they were going to convict Donald Trump. It's a zombie case. They called it the zombie case. The feds refused to prosecute it. The first DA refused to prosecute it. A guy got so disenfranchised he quit, wrote a book about it. I've been in the deposition of Pomerantz, and Alvin Bragg ran on getting Donald Trump. He didn't run on convicting him of a crime. He just ran on getting him. And so I think it's had the wrong effect for what people who are trying to use the weaponization of government. I think Donald Trump has more support from more Republicans today than he did 2 weeks ago, and you can count me in that group as well.
We are at the point of time where we need to hear from each of you for a time limit of 2 minutes on your closing statements in tonight's. And Kelly, you're first.
I don't know if I'll take the whole 2 minutes, but I want to say thank you to both of you for doing this. I want to say thank you to every single person who has come out and supported us, not just in this governor's race, but also throughout our 6 years in Congress and all the way across. I grew up in Dickinson, North Dakota. When I graduated from high school in 1995, everybody left. If you didn't work for one corner business, the first political debate I ever saw was Earl Strinden and Heidi Heitkamp debating the Buffalo Commons in the student union at the University of North Dakota. We have a ton of challenges facing us, but they're great challenges compared to those times. They're great challenges compared to those times because every single senior that graduates from high school in North Dakota can come back here, and they can start a family, they can start a business, they can start a life. We spend an enormous time talking about North Dakota as this economic powerhouse. We're an ag powerhouse. We're an energy powerhouse. North Dakota is a huge reason why the United States is the only country in the world that is both food and energy secure. That gives us a tremendous strategic advantage against Russia, against China, and everybody as we continue to move forward. But that's not what it means to us. What it means to us is towns of 1,600 being towns of 16,000. Means growing school systems everywhere from Richardson to West Fargo to Grand Forks to Devil's Lake to Tioga to Watford City. And we need to protect that at all costs because this place is really special. And we need to make sure we continue to grow, continue to give those opportunities, but we have to make sure we do it our way because our way is pretty damn good.
Tammy Miller.
Well, thank you, Steve and Scott, for this debate, our final debate. As you both know, this is my first campaign, so this has been a blast. It has been really fun getting around the state. We've been to more than 50 communities. We've been welcomed by school teachers, business leaders, just curious individuals, and we have had a blast, as I said. We've learned so much. We've listened, we've learned, and we'll take that learning to the governor's office. Now it's time for voters to decide. They can choose to have another business leader in the governor's office, someone who has a proven track record, has small town roots, conservative values, someone who has spent their entire life in business, creating jobs, solving problems, balancing budgets, delivering results. That's what I'll bring to the governor's office. We've had great success with business leaders in the past, like President Trump and Governor Burgum, and we can continue to have great success in the North Dakota with another business leader in the governor's office. I will bring that experience to the governor's office. I love this state, and I want to be part of the next steps to take our great state to the next level and to keep this very positive momentum going. I'd love to be your next governor and would very much appreciate your vote on June 11th. Thank you.
Kelly Armstrong, Tammy Miller, two candidates for the North Dakota Republican primary debate. Last chance to vote. If you're in Cass County, you can do that tomorrow. Otherwise, Tuesday is election day, and we encourage everybody to get out there and vote. And appreciate very much the time of both of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
guys.
We appreciate it very much. We'll take a short break. Steve and I will come back and have a little post-debate discussion. We welcome your calls and Questions, comments, want to rate the debate, call us at 701-271-1100, 701-271-1100. Short break and back with that after this on WDAY, AM 970, FM 93.1, as well as WZFG. Dilworth, Fargo, Moorhead, USA, AM 1100, FM 92.3, and KTGO, Tioga, Williston, and Watford City at 1090 on your AM dial and 92.7. More after this.
You heard from the candidates. Now we want to hear from you. The North Dakota Republican Gubernatorial Post-Debate Show starts now on WDAY Radio and The Flag.
With Steve Hallstrom, I'm Scott Hennen, 6 past the hour. We are going to take some time to get your impressions on what you heard tonight in our final debate. We've had now 2 each of the House and governor's race debates for the primary, one around the convention time, and of course, now these leading up to the actual primary vote. So we love doing these on behalf of our listeners, help you inform your vote, and we'd like to hear what you think, what you heard tonight, what you liked, what you didn't like. If you don't like our questions, you can give Steve and I a bad time about that. What should we have asked? Anything you'd like to talk about tonight. 701-271-1100 is our telephone number, and 701-271-1100. Steve, your impressions on the evening?
I thought it was a very cordial debate. A little different than last night, and I don't know why. There were definitely some pointed comments toward each other, but we didn't have any voices raised. We didn't really have any fire in the eyes. It was very, very civil tonight.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, it was. And
I thought substantive, though. I thought we got a lot of good things out of it. But yeah, it just there was no 3-ring circus here tonight. It was 2 people who I think are very professional in nature, having a very professional. It wasn't a debate tonight. It was more of a candidate forum tonight than it was. There was very little comments directed at you, so you get 30 seconds or a minute to respond. We didn't have hardly any of that, except maybe some of the unfair things that were said early. Went back and forth a little bit, but for the most part, people each of them gave their answer, and then okay, now you're next. So. Just seemed a very quiet night in the studio.
Yeah, but again, I think substantive. I think you heard everything you needed to hear on very key issues. So there's always more you could do to get to, but certainly I think a good mix with the debate tonight and the conversation you heard tonight here and the answers that you heard from each of the candidates. Let's take a few phone calls here and find out what folks thought in our audience. 701-271-1100 is the number, and Matt, you're first up. What'd you think, Matt?
Well, I honestly wasn't overly impressed with Tammy Miller here. I mean, really, the thing is that you kind of touched on it before the debate about her warmth. It was just really lacking, and I think kind of looking forward to, Tuesday, I think Kelly definitely has the upper hand.
All right, Matt, when you say warmth, you want your governor to be warm and fuzzy?
I don't want them to be warm and fuzzy. It's kind of a funny thing. But talking about closing statements, I mean, you hear it from Kelly Armstrong, and he's passionate. You can hear it in his voice, And I just feel like everything that came out of Tammy Miller's mouth was just clinical.
Matt, appreciate the call. Let's go next to Naomi. You're up at 701-271-1100. Go ahead.
Hey, I thought it was really good. I'll just piggyback off of what the prior guy said. Just talking to Kelly in person, he's so passionate and truly cares about North Dakota. And I just looking at his record in the House, and I know that he has always had North Dakota's best interest in mind and will continue to as governor.
What's the most important issue for you in your vote?
I would say probably the pro-life issue is going to be a big one for me. I would also just say because I'm 24, so looking to what he can offer the younger generation is also important to me as well.
All right, I love the fact that we have a 24-year-old listening to the governor's debate.
I was just going to, on a Friday night in the summer.
Friday night in the summer.
God bless you, young woman.
Makes me have a little bit of hope for the future, Naomi.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I'll say, Scott, I want to say something, too, about we've had now a couple of comments about just nature and personality. I have had very few interactions with Tammy. I don't know her well. Our paths haven't crossed. I've had her on my program a couple of times. I've found her to be very engaging, not standoffish or cold or anything like that. So when we were talking earlier, and Matt had referred to it, our comments of the beginning of the show, I don't personally see that as an issue. I'm saying what I feel like we're hearing from our audience, and we've heard this from the very beginning. Like I don't know her. I don't hear her talking about her family. I don't see her hugging puppies or whatever it is. I just think that that's something that as time has gone on, people have just said, I just don't feel that same way. I think that's a reputation. Maybe it's not earned. Maybe that's just a fictional thing. But
I thought she did a pretty good job effectively pushing back on that tonight. And saying, hey, and talking about her experience in interacting with employees and going out to the different locations of border states.
Yeah, and I thought with us and with Kelly, she's always been very cordial and very warm here. So I just want to refer to that for a minute because I think there is a reputation there. But I just want to say if anyone's asking what we have seen here, she's been nothing but professional and very cordial to us.
Opens up another line for you at 701-271-1100. Let's go to John in Fargo. Hello, John. You're next.
Well, first off, get out and vote. I don't want to hear Mike Montplaisir, touting on Wednesday that, hey, we had a great turnout. 30% of the population who could vote turned out to vote.
Well, we'd take 30%, to be honest with you, compared to where we've been.
We've had it as low as 19% in the primary, as low as 19%. And I think
you're right, though. It should be more than 30.
I think the high water mark since
why we get.
Yeah,
that's why we get the commissions that we get in the city of Fargo.
Yes.
Let's start with that fact.
And the school boards.
Okay, exactly. Now I'm going to tell you my take on Tammy versus Kelly. Kelly's a polished politician. He sat in our legislature for 6 years, failed to fix property taxes. He sat out in Washington for 6 years and failed to fund the wall. 2 strikes. As far as I'm concerned, I don't care for him. Now, as far as I'm concerned, it's an executive position, your governor. And I don't need a warm, fuzzy, puppy-kissing, baby-hugging politician who's polished. I want someone who gets to the nuts and bolts and keeps the state on an even keel. That's what I want as a citizen. And that's where I stand on this. I deliver to border states on a fairly regular basis, and it's a smoothly run operation that I have seen grow under her leadership. And as far as I'm concerned, there's a reason why Doug Burgum picked her.
Good feedback, John. Appreciate that very much, and I hope people heard your call on voting. I really do. I think the highest in a primary since 1980 was 39%, if my stats are right. 39% of eligible voters voting. That's terrible. That's the best it's been.
Yeah, wasn't it 18 in 22?
Yeah, it was teens. Yeah, I figure it was 18 or 19.
Yeah, something like that.
And by the way, South Dakota just had a primary. They had absolutely miserably low turnout. They did. So I'm not totally familiar with. There were a lot of hot legislative races, but other than that, I don't know exactly what was driving folks. I would think with a 4-way race for the House, with a high-profile governor's race, that really is going to determine likely who the winner is in November, would drive people to the polls. But, summertime, I don't know if we should move it. I don't know if we should, I don't know. I really believe this. The city elections and the school board elections should not be standalone in the middle of summer. They should be put with where the largest amount of turnout is.
I 100% agree with that.
I mean, something has to be done there for sure. I appreciate that. Let's go to Lyle next. Hello, Lyle. You're on the Post-Debate Show. Thanks for joining us. What's on your mind?
Listened to the debates tonight as I did last night, and they were pretty different debates. I think both candidates have some good points and presented themselves well. I just feel that Kelly Armstrong has an edge in experience dealing with legislature and the state and national level. I think Tammy Miller would be better served in the private sector with her business background, as she repeatedly brought up. I feel that she does have a good background in business. I feel she's running a little bit too much on the coattails of President Trump and Governor Bergen. And her statement tonight that how approachable she was, the previous encounter I had with her really was the opposite. I posed a question when she was on your What's on Your Mind segment, and she wasn't very approachable. She just basically dismissed my question out of hand as insignificant and really didn't take the time to even figure out what I was referring to. I just feel that we would be better governed over along by having Armstrong in the governor's office and Tammy Miller behind the scenes doing what she does best, creating business, and that. I liked Kelly's approach to property taxes, proposing a cap. I was disappointed in both of them that they didn't bring up the possible solution to the property tax as to controlling the spending, much less more than trying to raise more revenue and keep the taxes where they're at. So that was a figure that kind of moved the needle for me also.
Appreciate your call, Lyle. Thanks for taking some time to share your thoughts with us, and we appreciate it. 701-271-1100. Let's go to Wendy next. Hello, Wendy. Wendy, you're up on the post-debate discussion here. What's on your mind?
Hey, Scott and Steve. First, let me say thank you for hosting these debates. They've been great to watch and to get to know the candidates more. And, after listening to the debates, I'm Kelly 100%. He's approachable. He's accessible. I'm not new to North Dakota politics. I've been to the legislature. I've sat in when Kelly was the chair of the Judiciary Committee. I've seen how he works. And even though we may not always agree 100%, he will sit down and have that conversation with you. He'll listen to anything you have to say, and he's just always been that guy. He's always been the guy that you can reach out to. And I get the opposite with Tammy. She says she's going around the state and she's meeting Republicans and she's doing all of these things, but I know for a fact she came to our district and didn't even reach out to the local Republicans to let them know she was coming and ask if they wanted to host anything for her. So I don't feel like she's relatable or approachable.
Wendy, appreciate your feedback. Thank you for the call, 701-271-1100. Let's jump next to Bruce. Go ahead, Bruce.
Hey, guys. Thanks so much for hosting the debate. I really appreciate it. Great to get the insight. Just a few thoughts on this. First off, I'd say, we're fortunate in the state to have some good people seeking office. I think both Tammy Miller and Kelly Armstrong are good people. I do see, some stark differences between the two, and probably a little bit different viewpoints than a couple people here have shared. I know Lyle stated earlier that he would like to see Tammy doing what she does best, and I do too. I want to see her in an executive leadership position. I was a big fan of the leadership style of Doug Burgum in the state. Had an opportunity to work in his companies he grew for 20 years, and really liked what he did when he took his business experience to the state of North Dakota. One of the other things I really understood about Doug is he understood the power of leadership and surrounding himself with strong leaders, and that's exactly what he did with Tammy. She doesn't have the name recognition and maybe some of the charm that Kelly does, but she's been in there, working alongside Burgum, driving this agenda forward for the state, and that's kind of what I see there is there's a strong leader that'll carry that forward for our state. Don't doubt for a second that Kelly really wants this job, but I think there's a big difference in Tammy's ability to understand the issues. One of the main ones that's of concern to me is the topic of property tax and totally eliminating property tax. I think on the surface for some people that's a popular talking point, but when I talk to people, they're scared to death that if that catches on, the loss of local control could be devastating for the state. for small communities. So I think Tammy has a better ability to kind of command an understanding of some of these issues and not just go with what's popular opinion. So that's kind of where I stand. Would love to see Tammy continuing on the things Burgum has done for the state. Either of the candidates' answers on the property tax question that you agree or disagree with? The idea of, had an opportunity a couple of weeks ago to hear them talk at the debate hosted by WDAY, and sorry about that. And what I heard from that debate was that Kelly was pushing pretty hard for complete elimination of the property tax, where Tammy took a little bit more of a measured stance, where she was saying, "Hey, I see an opportunity here for us to take a look at tax relief, and it comes both in the form of looking at property tax, but also looking at income tax." And she's looking at the considerations of it. So I like that stance better, which is, hey, let's understand what becomes a true economic driver in the state. And she cited some things, when she pivoted and talked about income tax, where there's true economic benefits of looking at the income tax when we're competing with some of the neighboring states, some of the states for business and for employees to come into those states, and the benefits of maintaining a low or even the possibility of going to a no income tax like our neighbors in South Dakota have. So I tend to like that approach a little bit better than just going with a blanket statement of, hey, we're going to blow up property tax and take away all the local control on that. Bruce, appreciate your call. I heard it a little differently. I heard pretty forcefully that the proposed property tax measure that is being put forward by Rick Becker and other supporters was a non-starter for both Kelly and
for both of them. That's what I
Tammy.
heard too. I think Bruce might have meant to say income tax when he said property tax. And Kelly, I know, has said before that he'd be in favor of somehow getting rid of income tax in the state. I have to say this because I am a supporter of the Rick Becker plan. And I have listened to every argument against it. And I get that there are some concerns, but nobody's talking about the benefits of this, certainly within the circle that we have. Scotty, you and I see this issue differently, and that's okay. I love you. You may not love me as much, but that's okay. But I still have not heard anybody explain to me in a way that I can understand how you lose local control on this plan. And I heard again today, Kelly's answer on that was, if you do this, I just know how the process works. And these towns are going to go to the state. But they don't have to. They can go to the people in their community. And yes, they might have to call that tax something else because they're gonna likely have to raise. They're going to have to raise additional money. But the money that Steve Hallstrom writes out of his checkbook every year that goes to Cass County and goes to all the things locally, that money is still going to be paid to Cass County and all the local entities. It just will come from a different place. And if that local municipal group needs more money from Steve, they might go to the state, but they should first go to the people within the community. So everybody's assuming that Steve is never going to see another bill for something from the city of Fargo or the school district or the county. That's not true. The first place they're going to do is say, we're going to you for the additional money that we need. And that's how it should happen. I think we all believe that that is what will happen. But I still have not heard from two very intelligent people and my very intelligent broadcast partners saying, I still have not heard anybody tell me why this is a loss of local control. And if you want to talk about the prairie pothole money, and if you take Botno, North Dakota, and you say, well, they're going to lose their prairie pothole money, and they're going to have to get that from someplace else. Well, if you need money locally, that should come from the local people.
Then you're going to have an infrastructure tax. Then you're going to have all you're going to do is have some other tax that replaces the property tax revenue, and just call it something different.
But in the meantime, the money that I now have to spend on my property taxes is not now paid by me. And during that time, if I have an extra few $1,000s that I don't have to spend on property taxes at Christmas time when I'm paying my bill on December 30th or 31st, I'm going to buy nice Christmas presents.
There's no magic fairy that's
I'm not
going to
saying
sprinkle
there
money
isn't.
around. They got to find $2.5 billion out of a $6 billion budget. If you don't think there's going to be cuts that go to the local government where they're going to have to come back hat in hand and begging the state, you don't understand how this is going to happen. And why do we want to give a tax cut to 85? What did I think Tammy Miller's number was 85% of the businesses in McKenzie County are owned by out-of-state companies.
Because there are still a lot of residents in North Dakota, many more than that will benefit from this statewide.
Okay, well, take care of the residents, but nobody in these out-of-state businesses is asking for a tax reduction.
That's not the measure we have. The measure we have says this is how we're going to do it.
That's why it's flawed.
Okay, that's your opinion.
You want to give Walmart a tax break? They're not asking for it.
How many Walmarts are there in North Dakota?
There's a lot of them, and they pay a lot of money.
How many residents are there in North Dakota?
Again, the plan
How many farmers are there in North Dakota?
The property tax plan, whatever comes of this, and I hope something does, because clearly property taxes are a pain point. I'm not dismissing that at all. I'm saying what's proposed and maybe on the ballot in November is flawed. If you had dealt with homeowners, especially seniors, maybe cap the value when they come in, some other formula, but deal with homeowners. Don't do it across the board.
I'd be in favor of that too, Scott, but the measure that we have is the measure we have. And if you're waiting for the perfect measure to come along and then I'll vote for it, you might be waiting for a long time. In the meantime, we can get something that it gives real relief to property owners across the state, of people that own residences, people that own homes and farms. You can help them out now instead of waiting 15, 20 years for maybe somebody will come up with an idea that might work sometime down the line.
Specials will go up. Other taxes will be invented to come up with the same thing.
And they're going to now anyway.
Oh, that's not true. I mean, if the model, we have specials now, but I'm saying you remove property taxes, now specials are going to have to be more.
You are paying.
Now I'm going to do an infrastructure tax. Now I'm going to do a kabuki dance tax because I've got to find other ways. I mean, all it does is say you can't charge property tax. It doesn't say you can charge any other tax. So you're going to force the cities to find revenue other ways.
That's not the benefit. Nobody here is voting for this because there may someday be another fee or a tax down the line that they don't agree with. Nobody thinks that is not going to happen.
So you acknowledge that is going to happen?
Absolutely, it is.
All right. So,
but in
what
the
are we
meantime, we get mine and yours and everybody else who owns a house. You get that relief as a taxpayer in this state.
With $2 billion out of a $6 billion budget to accomplish it. So you should tell me where the $2 billion is coming from.
Do you know why all these politicians don't like it? Because it makes them uncomfortable. I get it. It would make me uncomfortable too.
I think Tammy Miller and Doug Burgum and Kelly Armstrong are three wicked smart people.
Yes, they are.
When it comes to what it takes to fund a state of North Dakota, and finding $2 billion out of $6 billion, could you do it at this place right now? If we said tomorrow we're chopping with a $6 billion budget here at Flag Family Media, and it's got to be cut by $2 billion, and everything's going to be fine. There'll be no problem.
There are people in the legislature that tell me that the money is there to move and make it happen.
Well, they'll have to answer that call. That's for sure. But I think you're listening to the wrong people. Anyway, we're not going to solve this one today between us, but I was heartened to hear two politicians who are asking for your vote saying the property tax plan that is making you feel good that might be on the November ballot is a bad idea, because that's gutsy politically to do, but they both did it. And that
I don't
impressed
know
me.
that it's gutsy politically, because I can't find very many people politically that will come out and say it's a good idea.
You did.
I'm not a politician.
That's true. Let's see. Let's go to Carl next. Carl, you're up on the post-debate show here on the Flag Family Media Network. Go ahead.
Yeah. Wow, guys. We're going to have a great governor. Both of these candidates are better than what we had in the congressional debate. I think it's a shame one of them couldn't have been in the running for that. I think Kelly Armstrong's sick of Washington and the swamp, and I think he wants to get out of there and get back to North Dakota, and I can't blame him for it. But I'm with some of the other callers. I think you need to have somebody in there that can govern, and I like a lot of the things Tammy Miller brings to the table in this case, but thanks for having the debate, and I'm glad we're going to have a good governor.
I agree.
You know what, Carl? That's
two really good options here.
That's the great to hear, though. You know, in a politically charged environment in which we live, it's so easy to demonize one and love the other. And you're making a very good point. I would say the same thing about the House candidates. I mean, any one of those. Well, I'd take Kara Mund out of that because I think she's kind of a protest candidate. You know, obviously running as an independent, trying to, take.
No, but the quality, we got two really good quality people here, and I don't know. I didn't see that the other night in your other debate. I think they're a step down from these two.
Interesting. Yeah,
that's just my opinion.
Yeah, you bet. Well, I appreciate that.
Yep.
It's
Thank you.
refreshing to hear that. Anything else you want to say, Steve? To Carl?
No. Oh, to Carl?
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate you having it.
You too, Carl.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Carl. No, I don't need to say anything else.
Roger, you're next. It's 701-271-1100. Go ahead, Roger. Are you there, Roger? 701-271-1100 opens up another line for you on the post-debate show. Tonight's debate between Kelly Armstrong and Tammy Miller wrapped up about a half hour ago, and we're taking your calls on what you thought. Questions, comments. If you want to talk about the property tax debate, that was interesting. I think they largely agreed, but it was substantive. What do you think else? Would you say were highlight questions?
I thought there was a lot of really good takeaways. I learned something tonight about the legacy fund and how they allocate the spendable money out of the interest on that. I had not heard that before. Tammy Miller said it's a 5-year average of what that interest is. So, but my point was still legit because at some point you're going to have $530 million a year. We just don't have it. Yeah, but I didn't know the mechanics of it. I thought there was a key difference in the eminent domain answer tonight with the Summit Carbon Solutions pipeline. I heard Tammy Miller say very clearly, in no circumstance, and I thought about following up and saying, how about where to survey the property, because that's the big fight that's going on now. But Tammy Miller, in no way, no shape, no how, never eminent domain. And Kelly Armstrong left that door open that in some situations, if the numbers were right, that he could listen to that. I think that's something that, if you're looking for headline news to come out of this tonight, I thought was good. I thought we also got some good specifics from the candidates, from both of them, about mental health and 2 specific steps that you would advocate for. I heard Tammy talk about assistance there, telehealth and other things. She has said goes broader. Kelly talked about incentives to draw people here to do that work. I think they're both right. So some good things came out of that. I thought I liked their answer on the I'll call it the Rupak Gandhi question about Fargo Public Schools. And basically they both said that no, Fargo, you can't just decide to do this, and that they would personally deliver that message to Fargo Public Schools. I like that.
And by the way, no money. You'd make this decision. It's going to cost you. Now, Tammy Miller did hedge her bets a little bit on taking the funding away because she said that would hurt the schools and wanted to find a little different way to penalize them. That's true. But they both were for some punitive measure, for sure.
And then my last one is a question. Honestly, we were going ahead of pace on questions, and I thought about, do you still endorse Donald Trump after being called now a convicted felon? And both of them definitely pounded the table. I think if you listen to this tonight, you know that you've got 2 candidates that very strongly support Donald Trump, no matter what his titles you want to affix to his name. So I just was wondering if anybody would hedge, if anybody would, Donald Trump, he is a little but there was nothing except full-throated endorsement from both.
All right, back to the calls here. Let's go to Roger is back. Go ahead, Roger, you're next.
You bet. Thank you. Good debate. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I'm really impressed with Tammy Miller. She came to our little rural town here about a month ago, spent the afternoon and evening, and answered anything we could come up with. And she's very conservative. She's an outsider. She worked hard to get where she got, and she's not a politician, and that's what I really liked about her. She's a very honest gal.
Thanks for that feedback, Roger. Yeah. It's hard not to be impressed with these candidates. It really is. I mean, I think, and I honestly think the same thing about last night. I mean, I think you have some solid citizens there, and Julie Fedorchuk, Rick Becker, and Alex Balaz. Again, I'm going to keep Cara Mund out of that just because I think she's more of a protest candidate than anything. But having run as an independent before, but sort of
I don't know,
sort
Scott.
of Rick
That
Becker.
seems harsh to me. But whatever.
Yeah,
I'm not going to judge her intent of being in this race. She obviously feels like she's got something to add. She speaks for a group of North Dakota Republicans that she feels aren't heard right now. So I love you, brother, but I just don't see it that same way you do.
I just see as a state that's very conservative that she would not fit the model. She says she's a Republican. She's a very different Republican than the vast majority
agree
of
with that.
Republicans. So I'm talking about if any three of those win, or any two of these two tonight win, you got solid citizens in that spot. They're going to, in the case of Rick Becker and Julie Fedorchuk, approach it from very different ways, no doubt about it.
I would change what you said just slightly. Instead of saying we've got solid citizens, I would say solid conservatives.
Yeah, we do in all of those. Absolutely. Thank you, Roger. Appreciate the
Thanks,
call.
Roger.
Let's go to Will next at 701-271-1100. Go ahead and rate the debate. Will, what'd you think?
Well, you know what? I think both Julie, or not Julie, both Tammy and
we're trying to
Kelly
keep them all straight too. Believe me, after last night and then tonight,
anyway,
back to back.
They're good people, but I'm not hearing what I think would actually be necessary to combat what's coming. I think we need a strong governor. Absolutely strong. We need a DeSantis that's not afraid to say no to the federal government, not afraid to say absolutely not. We're not going to do that. And I don't see. I know that we're in trouble if they ever shut down our oil and shut down the power grid, and depend on wind and solar to power North Dakota. And power farming. I mean, ag is fantastically. They are never going to have electric tractors. If you shut down fossil fuels, you're not going to have the power to be able to drive ag, and that's just a fact.
When you say that neither of them seem like they're prepared for what's coming, what do you mean by what's coming?
Well, how would this whole debate have been framed had Mohammed Bearcat, who was here and had intended a mass casualty event, not been stopped by a very brave bunch of cops? Would this have been framed differently, knowing that we've got terrorists coming across the border? Just recently, 5 people come across the border with 65 guns, and they were let go because the federal government told them to let them go.
I think they fled back into Canada, but I think that was on the.
Doesn't matter which border.
Yeah, no, I understand. Here's my question for you, Will. You're saying neither of the candidates, in your view, bring the fight necessary for what's coming.
I don't see the fire in the belly like DeSantis. He absolutely said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not shutting down Florida. We are going to be fighting the federal government. I don't see them saying that about the EPA here.
Will is my new favorite caller, by the way.
But they're not going to say, get the heck out of our state. You're not. This has nothing to do with you. Go protect our borders like you're supposed to do.
Well,
I will say this.
We get where you're coming from, Will. And you know what, Scott? We could have asked a question tonight about, there's now illegal immigrants we know that are North Dakota. What would you do day one? We could have asked that question. I didn't think to throw it in the list tonight.
Would have been a good question, but
to Will's point,
I will say this: I think Kelly Armstrong has said that the reason he gave up his seat in the House is because he's constantly fighting there for North Dakota, and he wanted to bring the fight home. So I think he's saying he gets it. He gets the battle that North Dakota's up against, and would fight it. I mean,
and I'll try to answer for Tammy Miller too. I think, from what I hear from her, as closely aligned as she seems to be with Donald Trump, if there were mass deportations day one, I think that she would cooperate too with what happens in North. I think both of them absolutely would. Maybe am I speaking out of turn, Scotty?
No, I think she's done a very good job of portraying the fact that she would be very aligned with Donald Trump.
Seems to me.
Whether that would happen or not is another story, I guess. But I think that's certainly been a tenet of hers in the campaign, no doubt about that. Will, anything else you want to say before we let you go?
Right. There's one thing. I think that somebody like Alex Balaz working in conjunction with either Tammy Miller or Kelly to make sure that that we're using the national security aspect of this whole thing and protecting against what's coming. We know they're here, but I don't think that we're doing a good job. Are we depending on Drew Wrigley as the Attorney General to be the top law enforcement in North Dakota? And is he going to stand up to the absolute malfeasance that's coming out of the federal government?
One thing I'd add to your earlier,
I don't really see.
One thing to your earlier point of the attacks on agriculture and energy that are certainly coming from the federal government. One question we asked tonight was about the Summit Carbon Solutions Pipeline, which is a project that takes advantage of a tax credit that was enhanced in the Trump administration that allows for the construction of the Summit Carbon Solutions Pipeline, which is not popular with some landowners. I mean, what is the number now? 80% of landowners have signed up, but 20% vocally oppose it, and there's obviously a debate going on with the Public Service Commission. Unequivocally, you heard from both of them tonight, they support that.
Yes.
And yep. I think that there's your needle being threaded on what is necessary to defend our coal industry, our oil and gas industry, our agriculture industry, opening up new markets for corn and ethanol. So I think they both stood pretty firm on that front, just to your earlier point, Will.
Right, but they have kind of acquiesced the fact that is there actually global warming? I mean, that we've given up on that. I mean, it just so happens that we've got a state that has done the work and said, okay, yeah, well, you put these regulations on here. We're going to pulverize our coal and use that to create clean coal, and we'll capture everything that's possibly can be captured. And at the same time, we've got China and Russia and every other and India building a power plant every week, and we're going to shut ours down. That's the national, but they have to be able to go in there and say, "Hey, it doesn't make sense. We are not going to adhere to the fact that the EPA is following their handpicked science."
Yes.
And they're handpicked experts to.
Will needs his own show.
Well, I was going to say, Will, I have a show every weekday morning from 8:30 until 11, and I'd love for you to call What's on Your Mind. Steve's got a show from 4 to 6 every weekday afternoon on the Flag. Jake Thomas is on WDAY 2 to 5.
And if one of us keels over this weekend, I'm calling Will to fill in on Monday. I'll tell you that. He's lots of good stuff. And Will brings up some issues that I did not think to made the list of top questions, but absolutely good issues that we all care about. I mean, we cannot ask too many questions right now, and we cannot talk enough about our national security. There is no question about that, and our energy security as well.
Thank you, Will. Call again. I mean, at 701-271-1100. Go to Josh next. Josh, you're up. Rate the debate tonight with the candidates Kelly Armstrong and Tammy Miller. Go ahead, Josh. Josh S., sorry. The one's been waiting a long time.
Hey, gentlemen.
Hi there.
So first off, I'll just start by saying I am what I would consider a political outsider. I know the names. You know, I try to stay up on things a little bit, but I don't follow anything really deeply. And for the most part, it's because I'm so disgusted all the time with everything I see. I got a little worried with the debate last night and how somebody described it as a three-ring circus. And I was like, man, I thought we were better than that in this state. And then tonight kind of, made me come back and go, okay, maybe we're not as bad off as I thought we were, and maybe we're back to square one, because I agree. Both the candidates tonight I thought were very articulate, very gracious, for lack of a better word. And to go one step further, I was bolstered by your interaction with each other about the property tax. I love the fact that we cannot agree and still talk about it and still be respectful. And I think that's what sets our state apart. It's nice to know that whoever goes in between these two is going to support us and is going to be a voice of reason. And when I think of like the presidential election, I go, I don't want to vote for either one of them. When I think of this election, I'd be fine voting for either of them. So I just want to say my sincere thank you to both of you and the candidates for the level of decorum in politics and how it can still be respected.
Very kind of you, Josh. And I don't know who called last night a three-ring circus, or if you just thought it was by listening to it. But I mean,
no, I said that earlier, and it was a little tongue-in-cheek, but it just got a little crazy at a couple points.
Yeah,
that's what I meant.
It was the Dylan Mulvaney thing kind of prompted
yeah,
a whole
that
little
probably was
a
part
little
of it
robust back and forth. But I think the most of that was 2 hours of a lot of really solid back and
forth.
forth.
A lot of substantial. Josh, let me ask you this question, if you wouldn't mind. You said you don't approve of either candidate for president. And I'm curious because we kind of know the reasons why Joe Biden is not an effective president. What about former President Trump makes you feel like I don't want to vote for him either?
I like his policies. I can't stand him as a man.
Okay. Well, you're not the first person who I've heard say that.
I voted for the guy. I mean, I voted the first time in because I was right there with everybody else. I wanted something new. I was so sick of the same people with the same policies, the same last name over and over again. So I was like, all right, let's get behind this guy. I knew he was crass. I mean, he was a reality star before he was president, right? So I'm like, okay, gonna give him a shot. Maybe it's something new. Maybe it's something fun. I don't have to agree with everybody. I don't have to agree with everything he does. I agreed with most of what he put in place. I'm not saying that, and again, remember, I'm very superficial when it comes to politics. I feel like he helped his rich friends just as much as anybody else did, but I also feel like he put a lot of policies in that benefited the country as a whole. But his demeanor and just when you hold an office of respect, you have to give respect to some degree. I understand you have to draw a hard line. I understand that. But it's something that I would expect to see in a bar, not in the President of the United States.
Josh, thanks. Josh, I feel a lot of that same thing, my friend. I do. I think the whole decorum argument, I'm with you on that. I have just seen how bad, so I'm maybe where you are. I was maybe there 3-4 years ago. I have just seen, yes, there's a lot I don't like. I don't like all the sophomorish behavior, the punching down, all of the stuff that goes along with. I don't like it either. But I have looked at the issues and I've said, look at what we have to face here. And if we can get the policy, I'm going to put up with a little bit of the sideshow to get it. But I hear you. And listen, everybody, Scott, you and me and everybody listening, you need to understand that Josh does not speak for 10 people in this country. Josh speaks for a lot of people that like the policies and like what he did, but there's just still something that drives them crazy. And you may not like it, but Josh stands for or is in a position that a lot of people are, and it's just good for us to acknowledge that as we're having these conversations. And Josh, thanks for calling tonight.
I just asked one more question of you, Josh, before you go. Yeah. Compare your life for 4 years under Donald Trump versus 4 years under Joe Biden, and tell me, with those two choices, that you think neither one of them deserve your vote, given the actual policies, the actual condition of our country for the term of Trump versus Biden.
I mean, if I would, first off, I guess I would respond to that by saying I'm glad that there's an electoral college, because really my vote for either one of them doesn't matter. It's the people that I vote for in the state that represent me that are going to make that decision. So I'm glad that no matter which box I check doesn't actually put the person in office. Honestly, this year I'll probably leave that box unchecked. If you're going to put a gun to my head and say which way would I go, from a policy standpoint, I would have to go with Trump, but I would toss and turn the next 4 years the fact that I have to check that box.
Wow.
Interesting.
Because it's just ick. And again, I go back to I wish I didn't have to say it, because I'm not trying to put the guy down. I don't want, let me put it this way, I don't want to put the guy down. I want him to be a stand-up guy that tells the truth. And I'm sorry, but if we're going to be very, very blunt and straightforward, are you telling me that he doesn't lie? Come on. He has been caught in, and I'm just being honest. Again, I'm not trying to be down. I want him to maybe get caught in little stuff here and there, but some of the stuff is just blatantly like, dude,
Okay, Josh. Sorry, Scotty. I know you want to get to the next out. Josh, listen to me though. I know what you're saying, but tell me a lie that Donald Trump said that is anything on the level of what you've heard from the Obama and Biden administrations. Tell me, just give me an example of one of Donald Trump's lies.
Man. And this is where I got to think on the spot.
See, this is the problem.
I think what you think he is fair. He embellishes, right? I mean,
absolutely.
If he's got a 10-point lead, he says he has a 30-point lead. Now, is that a lie? Is that a lie? Yeah, it's in his nature as a guy that was, he was the little guy as a developer in New York City. So he grew up believing you have to fight and you have to constantly show strength. But I agree with Steve. I don't think there's a lie anywhere near like what we've been told.
There
from
are
Obama
sinister lies, and the Biden administration is worse. If you look at all the lies that Joe Biden tells about
the border,
what he's done,
as if that's somebody else's,
his own life and his accomplishments, the guy is a disaster. And yes, Trump is an embellisher. He's a little loose with facts. Sometimes we get it, but he's not trying to deceive the people like with Obamacare, that when they knew that you're not going to be able to keep your physician, that we're going to say, oh, you can keep all that anyway. So I get what, but Josh, I would say look into that a little bit, because I think you'll find there's a lot more smoke than fire there.
I would love to see Trump's policies with Obama's demeanor.
Oh boy,
that's Ron DeSantis.
I'd like to have a beer with Trump. I don't necessarily like seeing Trump in office because.
Good spirited conversation, Josh.
Good stuff. But I'm telling you what, all of you listening now, Josh he is not alone. He is not alone. I know many people that are just like him, and whether they're evangelicals and like Trump and his past and whatever, just you don't have to agree with him. Just understand that he's not isolated. He's not crazy. It's just how he feels.
And I'd suggest having a conversation just like we did. Well, what do you mean by a lie? Well, I really can't come up with anything. He's seeing, have a conversation with somebody that in Georgia or Arizona or Michigan or Pennsylvania or Nevada, because I would tell you this, the future of this country rests on this election more than anything else in our lifetime. There are two very different visions for what America will be if Joe Biden's elected for another 4 years versus Donald Trump. Yeah. And you got to set the personalities aside. I get it. I know they're out there, but my gosh, we got a country to save. We need somebody to fight like hell for us. There's another Josh waiting.
That was fun, though, by the way.
Yeah, it was. Let's see if this Josh is going to bring it like the other Josh. Go ahead, Josh. You're up on the post-debate show. What's on your mind?
Well, I certainly can't follow that Josh's conversation. But I do feel blessed to live in a state that we've got a lot of great people willing to step up and represent here. I think Kelly's got the right policy. He's got the right direction. And I think he's going to be great for our state. Not saying Tammy wouldn't, but my hat's in for Kelly, absolutely. And touching on the property tax pieces, there's some draft legislation that's already in the works right now that if that does not make the ballot, there's some opportunities there as well. So just let the listeners know that it's being worked on. Representative Lauser out of Minot is working on that right now, and I'm sure there's going to be other pieces to follow that. Not saying one's better than the other. But I agree, local control is absolute in this, and we need to make sure that
here we go.
We're protecting our local political subs as well. So
Josh is breaking some news here tonight. There's legislation being drafted right now.
There should be. We need an alternative. People are ticked about property taxes, but the plan is horrible. So we need an alternative. We need something to be for. We need something to be for.
Scott thinks the plan's horrible.
It is horrible. I proudly stand with our governor and Tammy Miller and Kelly Armstrong tonight on that point. So
Josh, thanks so much.
You got Rick Becker on your side, and I got a few others on my side. So.
Listen to you now.
Yeah. Well, it's true.
Hey, I'll stand with Rick Becker on this one. I'm not afraid. I don't need anybody's approval to feel good about what I'm saying. Josh, who is working on this legislation now?
Representative Lauser out of Minot. I know he's working on some, and I've heard a few others.
Okay.
But in the last session, there's a $550 million of tax relief passed. So we're every day it's getting better and better in the state, and we're never in a better spot to do this. But
appreciate that.
I'd agree with you that I think that the initiated measure is the wrong way to go with this. Cass County's going to be fine, but Valley City's not.
Good point, Josh. Appreciate the call. We only have 3 minutes left here, so we better go quickly through these others.
This is what should be happening if someone wants to, because if this thing gets on the ballot and someone says in September, hey, look, don't vote for this. We've got this other thing. We promise we're going to introduce it. Then I think you got a chance. I've been saying that from the beginning.
You need an alternative, no doubt about it. Bob, you're next. Go ahead quickly, Bob.
I'm just going to break this up a little bit. I'm going to say go Mora Mustangs.
Hey, let's go, Bob. The mighty Mora Mustangs.
Yeah, 82.
Oh, boy.
No way. Bob, what's your last name?
Ripka.
Oh, my gosh. Are you kidding me? Nice. Well, good to talk. Good to have a little Rum River Conference vibe going on here in the show tonight. This is fantastic.
All right, thanks, Bob. We're going to go to Larry. Hopefully, he's from Montevideo. It say "Go Mohawks" here. Okay, Larry. Last call of the hour. Go ahead.
You were the Mohawks?
Yes.
Hey guys.
Go ahead.
Are you there?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. Well, good debate tonight. I just had a comment on, the candidate's reply in regard to. The guilty plea or guilty verdict on Trump. Kelly stated that he really still doesn't understand the charges. And I thought that was kind of sad because he is an attorney. And then
I think what he was saying, Larry, just so you know, though, that's how ridiculous it is that somebody's been found guilty and you can't even say what the charges are. Okay. So I think he was just using that as pointing out how the case was flawed, was how I took that.
Yeah, well, I didn't. I didn't think he got it, and he's a smart guy. And then what Tammy said, it was a sham trial, is what I heard from her.
Yes, that's what she said.
So then I'm not an attorney, I'm not a CPA, but I take out of it that what Trump was found guilty for was personal expenses.
Yeah, we have to run, Larry. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I do appreciate your call. By the way, the judge has alerted the Trump lawyers that prosecutors and the lawyers for Trump that there was a Facebook post claiming prior knowledge of the jury's verdict. Yeah, I was just going to say that's confirmed now.
Did anybody think there wasn't
coming
that
from the judge?
Fix was in the whole time.
Stay tuned to that one. Hey, join us Monday for the last countdown before Election Day on both What's on Your Mind, Steve Hallstrom Show, Jay Thomas Show. Thanks for listening tonight.
And then we'll be back on Tuesday night with all kinds of reaction to how things finish up on Tuesday. See you then.